Chris and Haley.
Indeed. Enjoy. Have a great night. Back at 10. Hope to see you then.
Welcome in, voters and non-voters alike. This is Florida Tonight.
The election night edition celebrating one of our greatest civic duties.
I'm Chris Cato.
And I'm Haley Hines. And hey, on this day in 1920, women won the right to vote.
Let's give it up for the 19th Amendment, y'all. And yeah, there's one. And give it up for us. It's our first ever and quite possibly last election-themed episode. We're about to school you on some of our great state's weirdest elections.
Which city settled a draw with ping pong balls?
And why you'll find the Skunk Ape Protection Act proposal buried in our state archives.
Evening at 7 p.m. as the polls have officially closed across Tampa Bay. And I mean, the first results, Craig, should be coming in relatively shortly.
Tapping into Florida Tonight for good reason. This is Florida Tonight. This is the big story. Months worth of campaigning going door to door. Millions of dollars of campaign money spent all come down to this.
Definitely. And I do want to also mention that we do have live coverage from across the state tonight. So in just a matter of minutes, we are going to be tapping into our reporters that we have at the Byron Donalds campaign in Orlando, David Jolly's campaign party in Miami, and we've also got the St. Pete mayoral race here locally as a big one. We've got Brianna Orodondo and Blake Devine live out there at Mayor Welch's campaign party, and then Charlie Crist. Craig, how are we feeling? We're watching some pretty big races here locally, but I mean across the state, the gubernatorial race, that's a biggie.
Well, I'm feeling great, and you're right. That's the big race. It's not the most competitive race. In fact, it appears to be one of the least competitive races based on the polling that we have seen, but truly important nonetheless. You know, in the Republican race, Byron Donalds has mounted a 30-plus point lead, 35 points in some polls here. So I don't think there's much chance that he will not win. The question is, what will the margin be? The polls would have to be substantially off at this point for an upset. Meanwhile, in the Democratic race, the same holds true that David Jolly is the overwhelming favorite in the Democratic race for governor, especially after Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings suspended his campaign a couple of months ago for health reasons. So there is little doubt at this point. We know who the nominees are going to be based on everything that we are seeing. The question is, by how much of a margin will each one of them win? And that's something that campaign donors, not just in Florida, but across the nation, will be watching. Will they meet expectations? Will Byron Donalds, in fact, win by more than 30 points, maybe 40 points, maybe 50 points? If so, that could be a jolt to his campaign in terms of money pouring in from all across the nation. The same holds true for David Jolly. Of course, if he runs the table in all 67 counties by a huge, comfortable margin, as he's expected to do, the national Democrats will say, well, okay, maybe he's got a shot at this thing, given the fact that he has strong, unified support among Democrats across the entire state. So this is a game of expectations, and it goes the other way around, too. If they don't meet expectations, if they don't run the table, if they don't run up huge margins, bet that donors will be looking at that as well, and they could be vulnerable for that particular reason and not getting as much money as they might be expecting after the big nights tonight.
Yeah, and we actually spoke to Representative Donalds earlier today on Tampa Bay Live during the 11 o'clock hour, and we were talking a lot about, you know, what he wants to change and what his campaign is focusing around, and a lot of it seems to be around affordability. I know he has a previous career in finance, and I asked him, I mean, the state of Florida has been said to be getting more and more expensive, so I asked him what, you know, he planned on doing about that. And I mean, what do you make of kind of his whole marketing around affordability? Although Republicans have been, you know, in the hot seat for the last few decades and could kind of have been blamed for making the state of Florida more expensive, if that makes sense.
Well, on a couple of points, yes. Republicans have dominated this state for some 30 years and held the governor's seat ever since Jeb Bush beat Buddy McKay back in 1998. And with that, just 4 years before, Lawton Childs won a squeaker. So this is Republican-dominated territory in the state of Florida. With that, the Republican Party has been in charge. It also has dominated the legislature, currently has a veto-proof majority. So when you're running as the Republican frontrunner and you say you want to change the way things are, well, your party has dominated the state. So you have to be able to make that argument, distinguish yourself. What is it that you would do differently? And it certainly stands to reason that he and every other candidate in the race for governor and on down the line in the down ticket races would emphasize the issue of affordability, because we had the huge run up in inflation midway through the pandemic, and then the rate of inflation may have come down, but prices did not. They continue to rise while many wages are flat. There are growing concerns about the economy for reasons we can get into as well. Plus, of course, insurance rates have risen dramatically in the state of Florida. Car insurance and certainly home property insurance as well. So it would stand to reason that a Republican frontrunner whose party dominates the state would say he's keenly aware of what the most pressing issue is, and he's going to have to spend time over the next 3 months, assuming he wins decisively as we expect, explaining more precisely what it is he would change, what he would do differently from what Republican Party leadership has done for the past couple of, not just the past couple of months, but of course the past 20 plus years.
Yeah. I know we're a little past 7 o'clock now, and we are going to be tracking the results live as they come in, Craig, and it looks like our graphics are starting to update here. Also a good point, and it's funny, I failed to think about this for a second, the fact that part of the panhandle of Florida is in Central Time, so they still have an hour to cast their votes, but these are some live numbers that are updating as we speak. What are you making of these?
Well, this is what you would expect, and 50% is a key number to watch there. That means that you're looking at effectively a majority or very close to a majority of the vote. If he holds that, then at this point, he would meet expectations. Now, you have Collins with about 27 points behind. He needs to run up those numbers a little more to fully meet expectations. Meanwhile, this is, well, we keep going back and forth.
There we go.
You give me whiplash here, Regina.
Sorry. So, I'm controlling these.
Now, here you have David Jolly with a, what is that, a 59-point lead at this point. That is precisely what you would expect. What we don't know, at least what I don't know, is that where are these returns coming? Is this the Tampa Bay area where David Jolly is better known? He is a centrist or center-left Democrat where you would expect this kind of huge margin? Or are these numbers coming from Southeast Florida where he may be less known and you may have more populist liberals in that part of the state? So we need to see if these numbers change. But if they hold, then what I said moments ago about being able to meet expectations, you've got Jolly doing exactly that. Though we have to see, again, which counties are reporting. And with Byron Donalds, yeah, 50% to 27%, that's a strong showing. That's 23 points now that I'm doing the math in my head. Sorry, I think it said 27 points before. So that's coming in a little lower than what the polls showed. But again, we definitely have to wait and see how the numbers move. But the early numbers show us that we're not going to get any kind of cataclysmic surprise. That the polls may be somewhat off, but they're not off to the extent that you would have an upset in the race. The question is, what will the bottom line numbers be?
Okay, and then we can move through some of the other races that we are monitoring. Chief Financial Officer, can you give some viewers the lowdown on what we're looking at here? Well,
Blaise Ngolea,
there you go.
Blaise Ngolea certainly is the heavy favorite. He is the incumbent. He was appointed to the position. This is no surprise whatsoever. He will cruise to the nomination as the incumbent, and he will face likely Annette Taddeo. She was able to really run the table among endorsements among the Democratic establishment. She also did very well as it relates to newspaper endorsements. To what extent that moves votes these days is not as clear. And look what just happened with the Republican race. We saw a huge trove of numbers come in for Ngolia, who is from the Hernando County area, currently serving, of course, in Tallahassee. So no surprise here. This is exactly what you'd expect. And here you have the race between Ford and Taddeo. Taddeo, a state lawmaker formerly, and with this, she built connections. Certainly ran statewide with Charlie Crist just a few years ago. Ford moved from a local congressional race into this particular race before Taddeo jumped in. Again, no surprises here. This is about exactly what you would expect. I don't know that you'd see significant movement in the margins at this point, but there is geographic disparity between the two of them. Let's see how the numbers may or may not shift depending on how much of Southeast Florida comes in versus the Tampa Bay area.
All right. And then we move on now to Agriculture Commissioner.
Wilton Simpson, yeah, the incumbent. Yeah, this is exactly what you would expect. You may have seen Taylor's signs around. He certainly was skilled at getting his name out and getting some visibility. But Wilton Simpson is an established Republican, a heavyweight, an egg farmer, extremely well known in our community and across the entire state. He was thought at one point to perhaps considered a run for governor. He decided to seek re-election, and he, coming into this race, was considered a shoo-in for the Republican nomination. And we're not seeing anything in these early numbers to suggest otherwise, with 14% reporting. Absolutely. And then you have, well, this is interesting, but not hugely surprising. With Pritchard, you have, he's in silhouette there, a police officer by trade versus Atkins, an attorney, and I believe a sports agent here. If you look at where the endorsements were running versus where the campaign contributions were going, they were lining up exactly in alignment with the kind of split you're seeing in the early returns. You've got 12% reporting here. Again, before I make any huge pronouncements, I'd like to see the geographic spread of those 12% of the votes that are coming in. But again, this is lining up according to conventional wisdom. Somewhere in the boards we're going to see here is the Democratic race for U.S. Senate, which I'm eager to see.
Yes,
but let's just tick through them and see what's coming in.
Here we go.
Okay, well, this is the Republican race again. Ashley Moody is a shoo-in, the incumbent appointed by the governor when Marco Rubio left his seat to become the Secretary of State for the United States. And with this, Ashley Moody is cruising to the nomination as surely expected, overwhelming her Republican opposition. No surprise there. Okay. What I've been saying all along.
Yeah.
Vindman, the conventional wisdom favored Vindman. It was Vindman. Remember, he was looking past Angie Nixon, wasn't he? For so many weeks and for so many months. You've got 34% of the vote in. This one appears to be a squeaker, and I said all along this is going to be the closest statewide race of them all. You and I talked about this just a couple of days ago.
Yep.
I was the one wagging fingers at people who said Vindman is a shoo-in and assumed that it was going to be Moody versus Vindman. No, Angie Nixon was able to get some late-breaking endorsements from some well-known populist left-wing Democrats like Rashida Tlaib in Congress, like Ilhan Omar, like Congressman Maxwell Frost. I could give other examples. She built momentum. And this is one of those battles between a center-left Democrat in Alex Vindman, the retired lieutenant colonel who is best known as a key witness in President Trump's first impeachment, and State Representative Angie Nixon, who is surely little known outside of Jacksonville, but not as unknown perhaps to the Democratic base that turns out in primaries. And lo and behold, look what we have here. We have a real race on our hands. And this one, I'm just about ready to declare, unless something crazy happens, that's going to be the story of the night. You just saw it right there. That's it. That's it. That's why, first off, you can't always trust conventional wisdom. What did the polls show in this race? You know what the polls showed? I don't know. I couldn't find any polls. I couldn't find any polls. I found one, publicly available polls. I found one back in July that was retracted. Oops, we can't rely on these numbers. So we were flying blind in this particular race. Everyone was. And to all who said, by gosh, Vindman has this in the bag, he may well win in the end. But it's going to be close, and Angie Nixon has a real shot at this as well.
All right. Well, I know that was as you said it. You can't really predict much because it's up to the people, and that's what we're seeing in these numbers. So that's definitely going to be a race that we're going to track very, very closely. And you spoke to both of them. We both did. Yeah, we did. We did. Sure. And we saw this coming. First off, there's no polls in this race to judge from. Two, if you had polls, you can't always trust the polls because you can't look at the top line number. You track the movement. That's moot here because we didn't have any movement to track. But usually in a race where one candidate starts getting high-profile endorsements, that candidate can ride some real momentum and pull off a surprise. I'm not saying that State Representative Nixon is going to do that, but she certainly has a shot at it tonight. And in fact, she is currently in the lead with more than a third of the votes in. What's critical is where are those votes coming from? Has Jacksonville reported yet? If not, that's where she's from. Yeah.
Right? She's only going to do better if those numbers come in. Yeah. Okay, well, Vindman, where's he from? Well, he's living in Southeast Florida. Okay, well, let's see. No, because base voters for Democrats in Southeast Florida do tend to be more progressive. And Nixon, who aligns with the Democratic Socialists of America, certainly may do better than Vindman even in Southeast Florida. And I would suspect probably is based on the numbers that we're seeing. I don't want to jump to conclusions. All we can say at this point is that we have a real game on our hand. And now I see the makings of the story of the night already, unless something changes. Is there a bigger story? Okay, locally, I would say the St. Pete race for mayor.
I was just going to say.
But statewide, is there a bigger story right now than this? No, certainly not in the race for governor, not in any of those cabinet races we just ticked through. Those are playing out exactly as expected. Donald's riding at 50%, maybe not quite as much as the polls show, but no surprise there. But for all the people who said, yeah, this is Vindman versus Moody, and they are already planning how things were going to go in November, well, they may be right or they may be wrong. We need to watch that one very, very carefully. Yeah, and we will. And I feel like that's really the beauty, Craig, of this live stream is that we get to see the numbers update in real time and bring it to the viewers. I guess now I had to put on my glasses to see the numbers. They looked like, yeah. And then I had to put on this, and then I saw the numbers and the surprise that leaped off the page in that U.S. Senate race. All right. Well, we are going to step away for a quick break, Craig. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus back to the governor's race. We're going to touch base with Evan Axelbank in Orlando at the Byron Donalds campaign. Yep. Sounds good. All right, everyone, stick with us.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in on our stream for this special primary election coverage across the state of Florida. What we want to do right now is we want to send things over to Orlando, and that is where gubernatorial candidate Byron Donalds is watching the results live with his audience. And we've got Fox 13's Evan Axelbank over there. Evan, how is the energy so far? How's it going? Tell us everything.
Well, from what I can tell, they have not yet seen the returns that we have seen on some of the mobile devices that we have, and they're going to be very happy when they see them. The question tonight was, can Byron Donalds get to that 50% mark? How close can he get to 50% in a four-way race? It was kind of assumed that he would win tonight, given he has the endorsement of President Trump and has carried a very large polling lead, has lots of money to spend. But it appears that he is right around that 50% mark right now. So it's probably a little bit too early to call the race, although it certainly appears that he is in the driver's seat and may indeed hit that very critical 50% benchmark, where it would show that more Republican voters wanted him than the other three candidates. Right now, Regina, the mood here, they're going to be they are festive, and they're going to be more festive as this evening goes on. You can see that people are gathering and meeting and seeing old friends and catching up, much in the way that we do at these types of events, because we see a lot of our friends from around the state, from different news stations and journalism outlets, and also people we've covered as part of the political process. So in a lot of ways, this is like a class reunion for lots of the people who work on the campaign, volunteers for the campaign, and also those of us who cover the campaigns and what have you.
Evan, I know we actually spoke to Congressman Donalds earlier today on our stream. I know he was making the road trip from Naples. And I mean, that's really just, it sums up all of his campaigning for the last couple of weeks, months. I mean, he has really gone all over the state. But specifically, have you noticed that he did do a lot of events in the Tampa and Orlando area? I mean, why do you feel that he would be trying to really hone in the voters from those two major cities?
Well, look, you've got to go where the voters are, and our areas of the state have always been important politically. They certainly were when Florida was more of a swing state. But let's face it, a lot of these areas in Tampa and Tampa Bay and St. Pete and over across the I-4 corridor to Lakeland and Orlando, there are lots of Republican voters there. And there are lots of people there who Republican candidates have got to meet. These areas of the state have grown significantly over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And these are critical areas. Governors, gubernatorial candidates, Senate candidates, they've all got to do very well in Tampa Bay and in Orlando. And so that's why you see so many campaign stops here. It's also worth noting that Byron Donalds is from West Florida. He's from the southwest portion of the state. But Tampa Bay has become a very large political center in this state. And right now it appears there, if you take a look, there is our sister station, Fox 35. They are reporting the results right now. You can see there that Byron Donalds is at that 50% mark right now. Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins at 26%. Paul Renner and James Fishback bringing up the rear at 8% each. So it does appear that Byron Donalds is going to have a victorious night tonight. He is very close to that 50% mark, and that is what those advisors wanted to see on the Donalds campaign. Get 50% in a four-way race. That is certainly an important number, and it projects strength going into the general election.
I have Craig Patrick here with us, Evan Axelbank, and we kind of have been following this together. I mean, Craig, as far as that 50% mark, you kind of said, I mean, he's been leading the charge here. Does it surprise you?
Well, Evan's exactly right that 50% is critical at this point to meet expectations. But in the polling, he also is leading by 30, 35 points in all the publicly available polling that I was seeing here. And you have a fairly comparatively strong showing from Collins, showing that in that sense, the margin is not as wide as the polls might suggest they are. We need to see where those numbers come in later tonight and whether they be Donald strongholds in Southwest Florida. But in that sense, Evan, I would say that Donalds has not yet fully met expectations if he's leading by low 20% margins as opposed to the 35 that was expected.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, Craig, is that there was a lot of noise coming from one of the candidates. I mean, James Fishback crisscrossed the state. He swore he would win, and he had built up a very large online following. But as political experts have been telling me over the last couple of days, people in the process, they've been saying, look, Twitter is not real life. Okay, let's just get that out there. Social media is not real life. And we're seeing that today. It's also possible, Craig, that polling is not real life. Yes, Byron Donalds is hitting that top line number, but it is a strong showing from Jay Collins. And it does show that Governor DeSantis, by not endorsing Byron Donalds, essentially made it clear that there might have been other people he would prefer in the race. Donalds is not somebody who ever got the governor's support, but Lieutenant Governor Collins did get the Lieutenant Governor nomination from Governor DeSantis. Maybe that sent a message to voters that even if there wasn't an official an endorsement for Jay Collins, that perhaps people who were not fully enamored with Byron Donalds could pull the trigger for Jay Collins and say this is somebody who we can see as the next governor of the state. It probably won't be enough to win the election, win the primary, but it does show that perhaps there's some discontent in the Republican Party over the top of the ticket. But we're going to have to see when all those numbers do come in.
And another factor, as you may well know, of course, you can't trust the top line numbers of the polls because more times than not, you're going to be wrong. They're best for tracking movement, which way a race is going. And we can't say for sure how much the lieutenant governor picking a running mate who happens to be a pretty well-known emergency management official as we're beginning to enter the thick of hurricane season might have moved some numbers near the end, though he appears to be coming up well short.
Yeah, and I would say to that, Craig, lots of Republicans vote on Election Day these days. So any Republicans who are waiting to cast their vote, many of them are not enamored with the mail ballot process. They have suspicions about that. Some don't feel like early voting is secure enough for them, although, of course, supervisors across the state say that it is. In this case, Republicans do decide late. They do vote on Election Day in larger numbers than Democrats. So maybe it was a strategically wise move to pick somebody, as you said, who was well known around the state at the last minute, get those last minute headlines, and make a statement to voters about the type of administration that he had hoped to run.
Yeah. Evan Axelbank, thank you so much for joining our conversation here on this special primary election stream. I know we're going to be checking in with you over the course of the next 2 hours, so we will let you go.
Yeah, and by the way,
what's up?
By the way, this is how Craig and I talk at our desks.
Oh,
so this is like nothing.
I know you guys could talk all night long. So we're going to head over to the David Jolly campaign in Miami. I'm going to wrap you guys up, but we'll check in with you guys again soon.
She's cutting us off, Evan. We're going to have to pick this up at your desk, I guess, tomorrow.
Right.
Or maybe we just take over here and go, no, we can't do that.
Listen,
Regina.
Evan, you're not allowed to travel next time. You're going to stay here. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for. See you guys. See you, Evan. All right. Good stuff out there. Busy night in Orlando. We're going to take another quick 2-minute commercial break. We're going to check in with Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer at the David Jolly campaign in Miami next. So keep it here. All right, everyone, we are back here on this special streaming coverage of our Florida 2026 primary. Taking a look at some video from earlier real quick of the former Congressman David Jolly voting with his family there in Largo. He is from the Tampa Bay area, but his campaign party actually taking place in Miami, Florida. And that is where Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer is joining myself and Craig Patrick live from this evening. Aaron, how's it going over there? How you doing? Tell us all the things. How's your night?
Well, it's going right now. It feels like every time we start talking, the music gets a little bit louder. So I think they're getting ready to have a potentially exciting night here in Miami Lakes. And that's to be expected going in. I think David Jolly, as we've been saying all evening here, was the front runner and still is the front runner on the Democratic side of the race for Florida governor. He's the heavy favorite, and he's somebody that people in Tampa Bay know very well. He was a former congressman from the Pinellas County area from 2014 to 2016, but he has had a lot of major turns in his politics here. We saw him leave the Republican Party shortly after leaving Congress, and eventually ended up as a Democrat after a short time as an independent, and then before announcing he was going fully into the Democratic Party last year. But how it's going here, I think they are expecting some exciting things to happen this evening. Right now, there are, we'll say, about 50 or so people outside waiting to come in here, and that's going to happen here at this watch party in Miami Lakes here as the night goes on.
Yeah, and I want to go back to that for a second, Aaron, because I know, as you mentioned, I mean, Jolly spent most of his political career as a Republican before becoming a Democrat. How would you say his campaign is framing that history as a strength rather than some sort of liability?
And I think he does think of it exactly as a strength, as you just said. He views it as a sign that he's willing to change his mind and stand by his principles, because in his mind, he saw the Republican Party going away from what he saw over the years that drew him to that party. But, you know, he has been anti-President Donald Trump since before the 2016, I think, then after the president won his first term in office. And then he continued out of the party, eventually becoming an independent. But in his mind, it shows that he is willing to make changes, to stand by his principles if he sees the party going in a different direction. And I think he hopes that he's going to be able to pull not just the Democratic side of the ticket, Democratic voters, but that independent voters and maybe some moderate Republicans will maybe agree with him, because that's what he's going to need if he wins tonight to face off against somebody like Byron Donalds in November.
Especially, Aaron, with a disparity in voters when Republicans now outnumber Democrats as they do. But he's got to be able to shore up the Democratic base, too, which is why I suspect he is celebrating tonight in Southeast Florida, where you have the largest concentration collectively of Democratic voters in the state who may not know him as well and who have had a long history of leaving their Democratic nominees at the altar come November.
Yeah, and it should also be noted that this is where his running mate, potential lieutenant governor, Gwen Graham, is also from. So there is a big connection here, and I think that's a sign, Craig, why he chose her. At least one reason why he chose Gwen Graham as his running mate, because she has such pull here in this area. She is the daughter of former U.S. Senator and Governor Bob Graham. It described to me that the Graham family essentially developed this area and helped build this area into what it was. So I think he's counting on that kind of support to draw some voters from this area, because he is definitely going to need it in November.
And there's a huge difference in money. You've got the Byron Donalds and his team with more than $100 million already targeting Jolly. And the challenge Jolly has, it cuts both ways. When your primary competitor drops out of the race, as Jerry Demings did for health reasons, it set up a situation where Jolly didn't get bruised up as he heads into the nomination. At the same time, he did not get as much attention as he would otherwise receive had there been a more competitive Democratic race.
Yeah, and I think the question is going to be, if tonight goes as planned, how quickly can he turn the voters who voted for one of the other five candidates on the Democratic side in his favor? And will they be able to pull their supporters? Because he's going to need every single Democratic vote he can get, and then some, to have a chance, I think, in November.
Are there any heavy hitters that you're seeing there or expecting besides his running mate that might join David Jolly tonight?
Say that one more. It's very loud here. Say that one more time.
Well, besides the music, are there any other keynote speakers, any heavy hitters, any key Democrats that you have recognized in the audience tonight showing their support publicly for David Jolly that may boost his profile in Southeast Florida, where he's obviously trying to get noticed?
Yeah, to be honest with you, there haven't been many. They're trickling in at the moment. They just started opening the doors a little bit before 7 o'clock. So I'm sure they are. As you can see, there's not a lot of people behind me. That's because they are outside the room that we're in right now. But you know, I think it's safe to say that he's going to get as much support as he can. And all of the big heavy hitters are going to be here probably trying to throw their supporters his way because they are aware of a potential uphill battle that he faces.
All right, Aaron. Well, we are actually going to let you go because we actually are getting some results in regarding other races live right now. So we'll check in with you next hour and stay safe and have fun out there.
All right, you got it. Sounds good.
All right, everyone. Craig, it looks like we are getting some live results as we speak. It looks like Mike Beltran has won the Republican primary and will face incumbent Democrat Representative Kathy Castor in U.S. House District 14. Was this surprising to you?
Well, not surprising, but we just didn't know which way this was going to go. The two front runners were clearly your former lawmakers, Mike Beltran and Kevin Steele, both served in the legislature. The polling showed Beltran would win in one of them. Steele had the advantage in a couple of others, so we just didn't know. We had some interesting developments on the eve of the election when a text message went out reporting that President Trump had endorsed Kevin Steele, which would give him a huge advantage. The problem with that is the president did not endorse in this Republican race. In fact, Trump had endorsed Steele from a prior legislative race back in 2024. Both are well known. They come from different parts of the district. So we knew that it was coming down to those two. Beltran, it looks as if, well, he has won, but I'm looking at the margins, yes. So that's a fairly comfortable win given the fact that you have four candidates in the race. 14 points, absolutely. That's not as close as a lot of people may have thought. This sets up a fascinating matchup between Beltran and Kathy Castor. Kathy Castor, the longtime incumbent, but her district has changed substantially from stretching into St. Petersburg and covering much of Hillsborough County to then compressing basically from town and country into South Tampa, and then stretching to the south and then to the east, right along the Polk County line. And with that, it makes it, instead of a Democratic-leaning district in terms of voter registration, a Republican-leaning district, which is why you had, well, you have four candidates here. I misspoke. There were 8 candidates total. 8 candidates in total ran in this particular race for a chance to challenge the incumbent Democrat for that very reason, that on paper it now shapes up very nicely for Republicans. I would stress the words on and paper, because Castor certainly has a very high profile in a year that seems to be favoring, the Democratic Party in general. So that definitely was a fascinating race.
All right. And it does look like we are also monitoring. I'm clicking through the different races right now, but we've got Leila Gray taking the primary for U.S. Representative District 13. And tell me about this race, because I know that she is local here, right?
Yeah, this is not a huge surprise. I would have expected her to win. She appeared to be the front runner by all rights. This is an interesting race in that the National Democrats have targeted it. This is the race to challenge Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna in Pinellas County. Now, National Democrats have tried to challenge her before with a full court press, and they've come up short. It was fool's gold before. They tried with Whitney Fox, they tried with others, and it just hasn't gone their way. But they're looking at shifting political winds with collectively, not upon Republicans, but among independents and Democrats, of course, the president's approval rating plummeting. They're thinking they can perhaps make a gain of this. But again, the district has been redrawn. So the bottom line is that Leila Gray, as expected, now goes on to challenge Representative Luna in the Pinellas County District. This one will be competitive. Get ready for a good number of ads that you're going to see because money will be pouring into this race. But having said that, at least how it stacks up on paper, you're going into a district that favors Republicans with an incumbent Republican who is getting increasingly well known. This is going to be a steep uphill challenge for the Democrats and Leila Gray. But having said that, not an impossible one. So this one will certainly bear watching as we head into November.
All right. Well, this is the point of our stream here, everybody. Live results as they come in. And we do want to continue our coverage by welcoming in a guest from the University of South Florida, Dr. J. Edwin Benton. He's a professor of political science and public administration. He is actually on Zoom live with us right now. Dr. Benton, thank you so much for being with us here. I know we're kind of a few minutes behind schedule. We had some live results coming in. How are you this evening? You have myself and political editor Craig Patrick.
Fine, thank you. I'm glad to join the two of you this evening and the rest of your reporters.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Dr. Benton, I know you are one of the state's leading experts in Florida elections. So what do you make of some of the results that have just been declared? You have Mike Beltran, who has officially been put up against Representative Kathy Castor. And then you also have Leila Gray taking the nomination for District 13.
Yeah, obviously the Republican Party would love to unseat Kathy Castor and add that as another seat with the Republicans treading water in Washington now. And Beltran probably is the best candidate of ones that are running that could unseat her. And as you mentioned, I think it bears repeating that her Castor's district has been through some gerrymandering that has changed the complexion of her district, where it tends more Republican, where it was solidly Democratic. Her former district really encompassed what I used to call the old city of Tampa, and that's not the case anymore. So there's a lot of people from not only Hillsborough County, but also into Pinellas County and up touching almost Polk County. It trends more Republican, or will trend. So it could be quite a challenge for Representative Castor to retain her seat in the fall. And Beltran appears to be, from what we know, probably the most formidable opponent and the one that the Republican Party are putting their bets on that can unseat her.
And I would add, too, that Democrats only need to gain 3 seats at this point, nationally at this point, to take over the chamber after the midterm elections. And this one, combined with Moskowitz seat in South Florida, are going to be the 2 key races to watch in Florida. Even though the dynamics of the district have changed, it favors Republicans. You now have a very well-known Democratic incumbent trying to hang on. Will this be, in your mind, one of the most closely watched races for the control of the U.S. House across the nation?
Yes, things could be interesting to watch in the fall, but I agree with entirely what you've been saying earlier. What we need to look at is how well do candidates perform up to expectations, below expectations, or even above expectations, and that is going to count. And the other thing we were looking down, I wonder how many Democrats and even Republicans that are registered in the Democrat-Republican side really are independents, but they know if they register as independents, they can't vote in the primaries, and therefore they're not casting their ballot. They want to make their voice known, and I say that because in not only in presidential elections but other elections, that the independent vote is going to be critical, not just in presidential. And the other thing I would look at in Florida is that in presidential elections, we look at what we call presidential coattails. So what extent is there a governor's coattails, such as DeSantis, whether he endorses someone or does not? That's something to be pay attention to as we move forward through tonight in the primaries and into the general election. The independent votes could be critical, given the dismal showing that the president has shown lately. And people, as we say, they can't punish the president, they can't punish the governor, they can punish other people of their party, whether they're running for Congress or the state legislature or even state office.
Dr. Benton, is there anything you want? I know we're watching a lot of races tonight, but from your perspective, as we wrap up this conversation, any races that you're eyeing in on, anything you want viewers to know?
Well, I guess it's two that you've mentioned earlier, and that is the race of in St. Petersburg with Charlie Crist running against the incumbent for the mayor's seat, and that could be a bellwether, if you will, for the general election as it go. And also, the other race would be the race in the Democratic primary with the person who will face Ashley Moody in the fall for that Senate seat, and there is a lot of speculation that Ashley Moody may have a difficult time winning, but of course, on the other side, there's the problem of being considered to be David Jolly, called a rhino. Is he really a Democrat, or is he just a turncoat who's looking to be a political opportunist? Not that I've heard a lot of people say that, but there have been some people said, how can he change his convictions over time? But of course he says, well, everyone has a right to change their mind, and he should be respected for doing so. So I see the Democratic race for the U.S. Senate and in Jolly's as being perhaps a harbinger of what may happen in the fall. It may portend what could happen in terms of the shape of the Congress, or even the Florida legislature. As just mentioned a few minutes ago, a veto-proof Republican, where Florida has been painted to be red for many, many years. And notice I'm wearing a purple shirt. That's symbolic. I still see Florida as potentially leaning back toward being a state that's just not a Democrat Republican, but purple in color and also political partisanship.
Well,
but it wasn't actually I wore the purple shirt tonight. Usually I wear, if I'm my coat and tie, I have a purple tie.
I love that. Dr. Benton, thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate you joining us on this live primary election night coverage. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon as the results come in, and now we follow it to the general election in November. We really appreciate you.
Welcome. Glad to be here this evening. My pleasure.
Thank you. All right, Craig. Well, some of what he just said brings us into our next segue, because the St. Pete mayoral race, we do have reporters in two different areas at the Charlie Crist campaign party, as well as Mayor Ken Welch. And we do know that Fox 13's Brianna Arredondo is joining us live from one of those, Charlie Crist to be specific. Brianna, thank you so much for being here. Tell me how your night is going. Tell me what you're seeing out there.
Hey, Regina. Yeah, so it is very, very busy and loud here at the Charlie Crist campaign watch party. Lots of people here in support of him. I can tell you that so far I have spotted among the supporters Senator Darrell Roussan, former lawmaker Ben Diamond, who's a state representative here. I've also seen several city council people who were former representatives here for the city, including Ed Montanari and Gina Driscoll, as well as another former mayor, Rick Baker, I should say. He is also here amongst the supporters for Charlie Crist. Last check, we were seeing and hearing that Charlie should be making an appearance here momentarily, so we're just kind of waiting for him to come in and talk to the people who are here waiting for him.
And Brianna, tell me about, Charlie Crist, and Craig, maybe you can attest to this. Charlie Crist has taken so many different roles here. I know he has run for governor before. Why has he said that he wants to come back and represent the place where he grew up?
Yeah, I mean, that's mainly it. You know, he has said repeatedly that he is a St. Pete native. He really loves this city. He loves the people here, and he just wants to make sure that, you know, they're really taken care of. And so he thinks that he is the best person to do that in this future role.
All right. Well, Brianna, we are going to touch base with you again later. Thank you so much for joining us from the Chris campaign event. We're actually going to take a quick 2-minute commercial break here, guys, and then we're going to touch base with Blake Devine. It does also look like Leila Gray, she might be speaking soon out of Safety Harbor. So we're going to see if we can get that feed, and we'll be right back with more live coverage. Stick with us. All right, everyone, we are back here on your live stream with special coverage of the 2026 primary election. We are live in St. Pete right now, where incumbent Mayor Ken Welch has just arrived to his campaign event, and it looks like he is speaking to the media. This is the whole point of our stream, being able to take you front row. So we're going to listen in for just a few moments.
Make sure you guys filter in, too.
I know I'm trying to get out of your way here, Mayor. All right.
He just didn't want it on his pages.
Yeah.
You good?
Not really, but...
Oh, yeah.
Come on, Mr.
That last minute killed him.
The more we squeeze in, guys, the more people get on camera. So good to see you.
Ashley, you ready to roll?
Let's go. You guys
all right.
ready?
Y'all ready to roll? Thank y'all so much for being here. First, I want to thank Rick Pauley and IAF 747 for this wonderful room. Let's give them a hand for the firefighters. So the playoffs are over, and we're going to the championship game.
That's right.
Tonight, the voters of St. Petersburg made it very clear that this election is not over, and this city is not for sale. And I'm grateful to every resident who put their trust in me to advance to the runoff. Now, St. Petersburg has a clear choice about the future of our city. This primary has been 5 against 1. And that's not a complaint, because as a old champion offensive lineman at the Lakewood High School, I like it in the trenches, and I know how to manage a blitz from multiple opponents. And that's what we've done. Now it's down to one opponent,
Yes, Lord.
and a clear choice on the path we take as a city. I'm looking forward to finally a substantive debate on what matters, our vision, our plans, and our priorities, not political sound bites and vague promises on affordability and outright falsehoods. The people deserve to know exactly what they will get in their next mayor. I want to thank the other candidates who did not make the runoff: Kevin Batdorf, Chief Jim Large, Maria Scruggs, and Councilmember Brandy Gabbard. I've worked with all of them over the last 5 years, and they all have a stake in this community and have worked in this community to move us forward. For the past 5 years, I've had the honor of serving as mayor of my hometown. We faced hurricanes, we've met housing challenges, and made the most progress on the historic gas plant in 40 years. We've driven crime down, we've brought homicides to their lowest point in decades. We've invested in stronger and more resilient infrastructure across our city. And I brought forward a plan for voters to approve this November that will represent the most impactful investment to advance our stormwater infrastructure in our city's history. Investments that were decades overdue, and we will finally fix infrastructure and system gaps that were laid bare by the 2024 hurricanes. We didn't point fingers, we're fixing the problems. And through it all, I've shown up to do the work, whether it's in City Hall or in the community. I've kept my promises to the community, and we've made the tough decisions, always focused on inclusive progress and delivering results for the people of St. Petersburg. I've been blessed to be the leader our city needed during the fight, not a Monday morning quarterback.
That's right. That's right.
Who, by the way, just moved back to our city about a year ago, just in time to run for mayor.
Well,
Charlie Crist has spent decades running for office.
My Lord.
I have spent the last 5 years doing the job of mayor of my hometown. There is a choice in this runoff. Whether we keep St. Petersburg moving forward with experience, steady leadership that is accountable to our residents, or turn our city over to out-of-town special interest money, $1.5 million spent just for this primary, money from outside of St. Pete, or shift back to the politics of the past. Look, to everyone who supported us tonight, and there's so many folks in this room who I want to say thank you to. Y'all have been doing the work in the hot sun, waving signs, canvassing, phone banking, doing so much. I want to thank each and every one of you all. To those who supported another candidate or are still deciding, I intend to earn your vote. Over the coming weeks, and as always, I will be in your neighborhoods, listening to residents and making the case for the progress we've made and what comes next. This city is my home, and serving as mayor has been the honor of my elected service. And I'm ready to fight for its future, like I've fought for our city our entire adult life. We have more work to do, more votes to earn, and a runoff to win. St. Pete, it's time to get to work, and we are St. Pete. God bless you. Y'all eat and drink and be merry. Thank y'all so much.
any questions? Any questions?
I did.
Questions?
Mayor, there's a lot of votes out there now. Do you plan on actively targeting not just those voters that voted for someone else in the primary, but maybe even some of those candidates themselves as far as joining the team?
Absolutely. I've spoken to a couple of candidates today as we were out. And as I said, the candidates I mentioned all have been working in our community. They all have laid out their vision and their plans. Charlie Crist has not laid out any plans, no vision, whether it's the gas plant, whether it's resilience, affordability. The people of St. Pete need to know what his plan is, and I hope he comes to some debates and not skip debates. Now, those other folks I mentioned came to all the debates except for one I think Chief Large missed. But he needs to come to debates and talk about what the plan is. If you're going to cut $15 million in property taxes, what will you cut? I've been asking that since the NAACP forum. So we're going to have a conversation, and the people will be able to decide. But we're absolutely going to talk to those candidates and their supporters.
Mayor Welch, for the people who may support another candidate at the moment, and they have some pain points, Tropicana Field, the so-called Welch piles, or Moffitt Cancer Center, how do you get past that and try to secure those votes?
Have a conversation. The Welch piles, as I told Kevin Batdorf, he named it that, is a short-term item. And they'll be gone in 90 days. They are gone. They've been gone since that 90-day time period. And I told him at the same time, the real issue is not the debris removal, which we removed more debris, 2 million cubic yards in 90 days than the last 3 hurricanes combined.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into our special coverage live here on the stream of the 2026 Florida primary. Myself, Regina Gonzalez, that is who you're hearing. And we've got Fox 13 political editor Craig Patrick with us as Mayor Ken Welch, the incumbent in this race here, is speaking live at his watch party and telling us, I mean, everything he has done so far, and Craig, everything he plans to do if he is elected again. But it looks like this is going to be a runoff here.
It'll be a runoff, right. And it's going to be Charlie Crist versus Welch, as expected. In this case, the polls appear to be pretty much spot on with the result we're seeing here, with the incumbent mayor in a fairly distant second place, 36% to 21%. You don't usually see that. And this is an indication, two things. First off, of one of the challengers being extraordinarily well known in that Charlie Crist is not just a former governor, but also hails from St. Petersburg. So that is his base. So when you're up against that kind of legacy and that name recognition, that's going to be a tough road to hoe. On top of that, there have been a number of controversies over the past 4 years, 5 years, in fact, that the mayor served because they changed the timetable. The leading one would be the challenges with storm recovery. What did we see just a moment ago after he declared victory? He's in second place, but he's declaring victory, of course, because he moves on to the runoff and lives to fight another day. And there have been cases of the second place finisher finishing first in the end. So keep that in mind. But I think what you also keep in mind is the fact that what happened after he delivered his remarks and took questions, he was immediately on the defensive. You saw it when we cut out. He was being asked, well, what about this? What about that? He was trying to become the aggressor. How, Charlie Crist, how are you going to cut taxes? And then the questions were about storm debris removal and second guessing his responses. One of the first questions was about the negotiations over a Moffitt Cancer Center that would have come to St. Petersburg, but because of the concessions or the negotiations that the mayor demanded, it ultimately fell apart. That's one of the controversies. And of course, you have the failure of the Rays deal to keep the Rays in St. Petersburg with a new stadium that fell apart after the mayor had already rewarded some staffers with hefty bonuses for, he thought at the time, pulling it together. Those are just some of the controversies that puts the mayor in this particular position. It's why he had so many different challengers, including some other well-known candidates who had respectable showings here. But in the end, the mayor finds himself on the defensive, literally in the questioning at this point at his own victory speech. And he also has an uphill challenge, I would say, heading into November.
Craig, we do have some breaking news to bring people right now. Looks like the Florida governor's race has been called for both the Republican and Democratic Party. We've got Byron Donalds, 49% there. And then we also have David Jolly. I mean, as expected, right? But then I really quickly also want to get to the U.S. Senate race because we were talking about, it looks like Angie Nixon has taken the Democratic nominee here. Craig, what do you make of this?
I saw this coming. I thought, well, I didn't know which way it was going to go, to be honest with you, but I thought this was a real possibility when a lot of people didn't. You watch the endorsements come in near the end. You have a little-known state lawmaker, but one who definitely tacks to the left in this race, who is a left-wing populist. And you have to look at what the electorate of the Democratic Party is going to be. In a primary election, it will be an electorate that tacks to the left. And so she's calling for Medicare for all, for free child care, for payments to people making $150,000 a year. You combine that with her alignment with the Democratic Socialists of America, and then you have high profile, I mentioned Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, some of the best known perhaps nationally. Well, that's sending a signal, isn't it, to liberals, and particularly to the left wing, the far left wing of the Democratic Party, that in fact she could be formidable because you have some high profile players in left wing politics aligning with her. And then in Orlando, which has become a Democratic stronghold, you have Anna Eskamani, state representative running for mayor next year herself. You have Congressman Maxwell Frost. You have some heavy hitters who lined up behind her. And in the absence of any polling that I could find, I knew this could be a possible outcome. This perhaps is, by all appearances, it is a huge disappointment, obviously. And you might think that Vindman is gobsmacked at this point because he was looking past her. I think that might have been one of his mistakes, too. I think that Democratic voters see a candidate looking past their challenger and just assuming he's going to take on Nixon and barely mentioning, always mentioning Ashley Moody, barely mentioning Angie Nixon, not giving her the time of day, basically writing her off. I think that might have rubbed some base Democratic voters the wrong way. So this did not go the way that conventional wisdom held. There always is the possibility that Vindman knew that he had in his first race a real challenge on his hands, and perhaps he was going to try to engineer perceptions to make it look as if, with all the money and name recognition that he had, that you can't give Angie Nixon any real hope because, by gosh, he's got this. He was trying to engineer those perceptions, but certainly Democratic voters did not buy it. I think you're going to see, and I'm not in the opportunity now to dig into the precinct and city by city numbers, but I think you're going to see huge swings from one city to the next in different parts of Florida. But in the end, it doesn't matter. I think in Jacksonville, because that's where she's from, and in Orlando and Alachua County, big college town, and in Tallahassee, and I suspect Southeast Florida, that's where you will see Angie Nixon running up big numbers on Alex Vindman, though Vindman is from Southeast Florida. Yes, this is a surprise. This breaks conventional wisdom. You can't trust conventional wisdom. You can't always buy what the talking heads are selling you. And this is case in point. This is Exhibit A right here, that when you have a populist candidate, especially in the day and age in which we live, in which populist politics sells among base voters, and base voters are those who tend to drive turnout in primaries, that this is the kind of result that you are going to get. And I think this is going to make some national news. Now, in matchups with Moody, early polling shows both of them trailed, though Nixon not quite as much as Vindman in one of the polls. This one's going to get some real attention. This one's going to draw obvious comparisons to Wisconsin. Wow. It's going to draw obvious comparisons, I think, to Michigan as well, because in those races, you had a center-left Democrat, an establishment type of Democrat versus a left-wing populist. And in this particular case, not just that, but one who aligns and identifies with, and in fact has called herself a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. They're going to look at this race and say, look what just happened in Florida. Look at what the Democratic electorate in Florida is thinking. And it's quite a juxtaposition. It's quite a contrast, really, in who the Democrats chose in the U.S. Senate race versus who they chose by an overwhelming margin in the race for governor in David Jolly. These are two very, very different kinds of Democrats in terms of their beliefs, their priorities, the policies that they would push. And of course, one is federal office, one is state. This is a fascinating ticket that you now have at the top of the Democrats' ticket heading into November. Absolutely fascinating. One of the most interesting races I've seen since 2018 in the state of Florida.
Yeah. Honestly, for myself, too, I feel like as this coverage has been going over the last couple of months, as we followed the candidates and their reasoning for doing what they're doing, I have learned so much. And we even had Angie Nixon on here live. I mean, she was very vocal about everything she stands for. I mean, remember when she was going around on the floor with the big megaphone? What was that about again?
Well, she was protesting. Redistricting, gerrymandering.
Yes.
Let's call it for what it is, gerrymandering. And then she took to the floor with a bullhorn in a show of disruption. I can say tactically it may have backfired because you had a couple of Democrats who said they voted the wrong way. And one of those Democrats say they were so distracted by Nixon over there, they just got confused and they pushed the wrong button. So she may have taken the numbers in the wrong direction. But what happened, she definitely got noticed. And this is a social media algorithm-driven world in which we live, in which there isn't a lot of room for nuance getting a whole lot of attention, and where a lot of people draw their information and news. But bet when you show up with a bullhorn on the floor of the House, then you're going to get a lot of attention. You're going to get noticed. Then you combine that with left-wing players endorsing your campaign, especially near the end of the race. I think that made all the difference, because this is someone who was little known and had comparatively very little money from the Jacksonville area. To be able to run up those kinds of numbers, that's a combination of left-wing populism and this battle of sorts we're seeing within the Democratic Party itself of where it wants to identify. And it wound up with a moderate Democrat at top of the ticket of governor and a populist who identifies with the Democratic Socialist of America, and who is, even when asked, said, should you abolish the Senate? She said she was open to it in one of the interviews that I saw. So this is going to be absolutely fascinating to me to watch. And while she enters the race against Ashley Moody as quite an underdog, as one would expect, I think she's going to draw a lot of headlines, and a lot of political scientists are going to look into this and read an awful lot into it. Then some of them may wonder to what impact can having two very different profiles of Democrats at the top of the ticket, can that help? Can David Jolly mobilize moderate and center-left Democrats while Angie Nixon mobilizes the far left, and they can help each other out in that sense? I guess that remains to be seen, but it is definitely something I look forward to seeing and see how it all plays out.
Definitely. And what I want to do right now, Craig, is take a look at both of the Florida gubernatorial candidates who have officially claimed the seat here on the primaries. I mean, David Jolly, as you said, I mean, both of these are not really surprising in a sense. Byron Donalds with that 49%. And actually, I do believe we are getting in a feed once again from the Donalds campaign party in Orlando. Fox 13's Evan Axelbank is out there live as we speak. What we are going to do is we are going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to monitor several different feeds that we've got coming in to our newsroom right now. Officially almost 8:15 here, and active results coming in, everyone, as we speak. More races being called. You've got people speaking at their events. These candidates who have officially claimed at least the first step in a victory. So we're going to step away for that break. We'll assess everything that is streaming live, and we'll touch base with Evan Axelbank in just a moment. Welcome back into our stream, everyone. We are here with your special Florida primary 2026 coverage. Everything happening in real time right now. We are taking you out really quickly to Miami, where speakers have just stepped up to the podium as David Jolly has secured the Democratic nomination for the governor's race. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, term limited here. But over in Orlando, it does look like Byron Donalds claiming the Republican seat. We are going to monitor this. We are going to head on over to the Orlando campaign party where Byron Donalds is watching the results in real time with his audience. We've got Fox 13's Evan Axelbank out there live. Evan, can you hear us okay? I see your screen on a video. Do we think Byron is going to speak soon?
Because the Florida way of life.
We were just watching the biography video that they have running of Byron Donalds right now. This is kind of the hype video that they're running to get the crowd here excited for Byron Donalds' appearance. I've been told that he's going to be speaking closer to 9 than he is to 8, meaning after 8:30. But maybe they're going to bring him out soon. So we can chat for a little bit here to see if they bring him out soon. Look, the fact is, this is somebody who was a congressman, or is a congressman. He was elected just about 6 years ago now. And he is now the Republican nominee for the for the governorship of Florida. So, look, he may not have put up the exact type of night that his team would have called perfect. He does not appear to be over 50%. It appears that Jay Collins had a very solid showing tonight, or at least better than what the polls showed. Somewhere in those mid-20s. Byron right now is at about 49%. They had hoped that he would be over 50 to show that more Republicans voted for him than for somebody else. But there is hope that the Collins campaign will endorse Donalds in short order. So you see that biographical video is now ending, and now Byron Donalds' family is going to be coming out. I'm going to sit down here. Here come family members of Byron Donalds. So I don't know if you want to listen to them talk or if you want to talk to me, but I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, Evan, actually, if they are taking the stage, we can tap into them for just a minute. Thanks so much for keeping us updated.
Yeah, you can see they're throwing some hats out into the stage, into the crowd. There are his kids. Yep, there they are. And they're happy and I'm sure proud of their dad tonight. Right now, their dad has a chance of becoming the governor of Florida, the first African-American governor of Florida. And these young men are having an awfully good time tonight. This must be an enormously proud night for the Donalds family.
And I guess this answers my question as to what happened. What was that reaction like when that green check mark went on the screen for Donalds?
Well, they're certainly happy here. The question is just how much of a showing, how can they make the case to the general electorate that this was the strong showing that they wanted? Look, a win is a win in politics. That is just a fact. As I've said, they hope to be over that 50% mark. Everybody kind of knew they would win tonight. Donald Trump's endorsement has again proven to be gold in Republican politics here in the state of Florida. Let's see where they're bringing it now. Here's Erica Donalds coming out. This is the charter school activist, the educational activist here in Florida. And she hopes the next First Lady, Erica Donalds, she's going to be coming out here. Yep, there she is over on the left side. It may be hard for us to get a shot of her, but she also must be enormously proud of herself and of her husband. They were activists in Southwest Florida, Tea Party activists. They pushed for school reform in the school districts down south from where we are in Tampa Bay, in both in Lee and Collier counties. And they have risen from Tea Party activism to now taking control, not just of the Republican Party in Florida, but to have a good chance potentially of becoming the next first family of the state of Florida. Remember, a Democrat has not won statewide in this state since 2018, and they have not won the governor's office since 1998, or 1994, I should say. Jeb Bush won in 1998. So if politics sort of follows the track it's been on here in Florida, they will be the next first family of the state of Florida. But remember, David Jolly's campaign, who we've been hearing from all night, they believe they're running a different kind of campaign, and they believe that they have a shot. So, Regina, do you want to listen in?
Yeah, go ahead, Evan. You're free to go. Thank you so much. We'll listen in here.
Look at this room. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm Erica Donalds, a sixth-generation Floridian, and it is my honor to be married to the next governor of the free state of Florida. What a journey. What a journey this has been. All of these months, all of these miles, the Lincoln dinners, the REC meetings, rally after rally, county after county, and every one of you who knocked doors, who made, who worked the kids, sweating from that day. I just have to say thank you. Thank you so much. This win, it's yours, it's ours, it's all of ours. This is a win for our party and our movement. We're going to pause for just a second. People have been telling me all day, pause, take it in. I want to talk about our journey for a minute because it hasn't always looked like this. I both grew up living paycheck to paycheck. We met working our way through college. Our families couldn't help us much, even if they really wanted to. And within an 18-month span, we graduated, we moved to Naples, we got married, and we had our first son. We started at the bottom with big debt and big dreams and each other, but that's about it. We each worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. We took a Dave Ramsey course at our church. We put our cash in envelopes, and we snowballed our way out of debt, one payment at a time, probably like some of you. We laugh about that now, but there were times when it was hard. And tonight, all across our state, many Floridians.
All right, everybody, as you can hear and see, Erica Donalds speaking following her husband Byron Donalds' nomination. But we are going to cut across the state because we do have the man who secured the Democratic nomination for this year's governor race, David Jolly, up at the podium speaking live in Miami, Florida. Let's listen in here.
Government needs to do its part to fill in the gaps, to provide for housing, for health care, for education, clean water, clean air, safe communities, and a coalition that knows that everybody's rights should be protected and their dignity respected. This is a coalition not bound together by party, but bound together by patriotism. Because this new majority in American politics understands something very important tonight. That we are celebrating more than just a primary victory. We are celebrating the return of a resiliency, the renewal of a hope, the belief in each other once again, the belief in something better, that we are better in this moment than where our leaders are dragging us. Because this majority also understands tonight, sadly, that we are a nation that is broken. We are a nation in crisis. We are more divided than ever before. Our leaders wake up every day and they tell us they hate each other, and it's wrong. It's wrong. This is a moment where we are believing again in each other, not because of the strength of an ideology, but because of the strength of a people, because the values that are holding us together are American values that have made this nation strong, that have created the greatest amount of economic and upward mobility the nation's ever seen. But we're being strained tonight but we're rising to this moment together. To my Democratic friends, thank you for welcoming me into the party. Thank you. Thank you. We have built friendships. We have found common ground. We have gathered around the values of our party. And I want to thank you for your friendship. And I want to thank you tonight for giving me the opportunity to be your nominee to be the next governor of the state of Florida. You see, when we talk about the values that hold us together, many of you have heard this. These values are found in the history of the Democratic Party. It's why I came into the Democratic Party, not to change it, but to grow it. You see, the values that, yes, everybody deserves an economy that works and a government that's helping out means a state catastrophic fund for homeowners insurance. It means an investment, a historic investment in workforce and affordable housing. It means the delivery of more health care in more communities. And yes, it means a commitment to public education in the state of Florida once and for all. And yes, that value that everybody's rights should be protected and their dignity respected means regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship, regardless of your abilities, your special abilities, your disabilities, or your walk of life. Whether your foundations are rooted in faith or Jefferson's natural rights of man, what we know is everybody deserves the economic liberty and the personal liberty that was at the foundation of the start of the nation. We got so much wrong. We got so much wrong at the beginning. People of color were 3/5 of a person. Women did not have economic or legal rights. But that arc of history bent towards progress. That arc has bent backwards in the last 8 years. And it's one of the reasons that people are asking for change. To my Democratic friends, thank you for this opportunity. The values that hold us together are big enough to build a coalition tonight to win the governorship in November. And to my Republican and independent friends, I want to share with you the values that I have always fought for. You see, I do think government should be lean. Government should be held accountable. But government should be smart. Because you see, when we deliver a state catastrophic fund for homeowners insurance, we lead the world with an economic model that not only covers hurricanes and wind, but it cuts private homeowners insurance bills by 60 to 70%. When we deliver more health care to people, we actually reduce the cost to a system in a state where we are 49th in avoidable hospital costs. And when we commit to public education, we create a more resilient economy. We empower youth and we change lives. So yes, government should be lean and efficient, but it should be smart. We should be a state that commits to low taxes. And yes, I do believe in the old school Republican principle of local control. The government closest to the people actually does know best. As your governor, I will undo preemption because every local official in this state, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, knows that your rights and your authority and your local decision-making have been under attack through this governor and his preemption. And I will also tell you, yes, as an old school Republican, I talk about ending the culture wars not to celebrate some progressive platform, but because I still believe in the old school Republican libertarian policy that government should simply stay out of your life and stay out of your bedroom and stay out of your doctor's office. You see, real freedom, not the freedom manufactured in Tallahassee these days, real freedom. Yes, and if it sounds familiar, Republicans and independents tonight, it's because while some of your leaders may have forgotten their roots, I have not forgotten mine. You see, this moment is bigger than party. I also want to address a very specific community tonight, and I will ask you to give me grace, but this conversation needs to be had. I want to address the faith community across the state of Florida tonight. Many of you know I am a child of the church. I celebrate my faith. Laura and I are raising our kids in the Christian faith that we have chosen for our family. I also know that the role of a governor is to ensure that everybody is extended the liberty to worship, to choose who they worship, or to choose no God at all. You see, I celebrate and believe in the saving grace of the Jesus Christ who I call my God. And my message to the faith community tonight, to the church, is this. For too long, we as a church have allowed one party to co-opt the faith community. That has to stop. That has to stop. But the answer is to not allow another party to co-opt the church. The answer is to ask of government for a simple promise, to be extended religious liberty for those who practice or those who choose not to practice whatsoever. And beyond that, to keep government out of our church, out of our synagogues, and out of our mosques, and out of our lives. You see, it doesn't weaken us as a faith community. It strengthens us. It strengthens us. One last community I want to recognize tonight in my words. And it's the special interest community that has poured over $100 million into Byron Donalds' campaign. The state is watching. The state is watching. Voters are smarter than you think. You see, Byron Donalds has sold the governor's mansion to the highest bidder. And the special interests across the state have been happy to play ball, folks. Let me tell you something. Byron Donalds might be for sale, but Gwen Graham and David Jolly never are. We never are. We never are. Everybody in this state can pull up a chair to the table, but money doesn't buy access. If you think you're going to buy access, stand in line, because you're standing in line between the people of this room and the people across the state of Florida tonight. Listen, let's be honest. To voters out in Florida tonight, your life is more expensive because politicians like Byron Donalds are in bed with special interest. Housing, health care, food, and gas, it's costing you too much. You have data centers coming into your neighborhoods, utility companies jacking up your rates. Your local school has been abandoned, and Byron Donalds profits off all of that. The difference between me and Byron Donalds is that Byron Donalds will sell his governorship for $1. David Jolly and Gwen Graham are going to fight for every voter across the state of Florida tonight. Listen. Folks, this is that moment. I promise you, if the election were tonight, we are going to win the governorship of the state of Florida. We are going to win the governorship of the state of Florida. Yes, Gwen and I are building a campaign to meet this moment, but it's bigger than candidates. You see, we're just the candidates in the race. The coalition, the voters are the ones standing up saying, we have had enough. We have had enough. Now is the time. History is watching. History is calling. Our 2 young kids are looking at us saying, what are you doing to make life better for us? Our children look at us and think politics is toxic. It's vile. It's mean. But guess what? Together, in the last 18 months in this state, a resiliency has emerged, a belief in each other, the promise to each other, the Florida promise that if we trust each other and make sure everybody has a fair shot, everybody's rights are protected, that we honor something much greater than our politics, much greater than our party. We actually litigate who we are as a people. We're litigating our national identity right now. We know that. Regardless if you're a Republican, independent, or a Democrat, you know our politics are broken. This is an opportunity, folks, where we come together as a state and we defy history. I need your help. Gwen needs your help. Be a part of this coalition. Be a part of real change. Be a part of real change in the state of Florida. Yes, if you're a Democrat, we're going to celebrate the values that the economy should work for everyone. Government can make your life a little better. Everyone's rights should be protected. But if you're an independent and a Republican tonight, you know those values are right for you as well, and you know they're right for your kids and your grandkids. I need your help. I need your help. I need your vote. I need your vote, and I need your help. Folks, every day in our house, we tell our 2 young kids, Cece and Teddy, 7 and 5 years old, that when you have a chance to change the world, you take it. When you have a chance to change the world, you take it. This is that moment. This is that moment where history is watching, asking us what we are doing. We know our politics are broken. We know the economy's gotten away from us. We know the basic American investments in housing, healthcare, education, safe communities, the environment have been under attack from our Republican friends. Folks, this is the moment where we rise up as a people. Yes, led by Democrats, but bigger than this. And I promise you something that's going to happen. History is watching right now. The eyes of the world are on us. We're going to leave here tonight, and you're going to learn that we're leading Byron Donalds by a point right now in the general election. Why? 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 Because voters are desperate for change. We are believing in each other, folks. I am begging you right now, believe in something better. Allow us to say to our kids and our grandkids to be able to look at each other and to say we are changing the world, because when we win the Florida governorship, guess what? We do just that. We reshape American politics. The road to the White House runs through Florida. We have an opportunity to undo gerrymandering. But more importantly, we have the opportunity to show how to build a coalition around American values led by Democrats with independent and Republican friends that believe in the basic strength of who we are. I believe in you tonight. I believe in every voter across the state of Florida tonight, because I know each one of you are creating the coalition that's allowing us to win this race in November. Folks, be a part of this. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for tonight.
All right, everybody, there you have it. David Jolly clinching the Democratic nomination for governor, talking and thanking everyone in this room and the people of Florida for allowing, this to happen. Craig Patrick in the room with us right now, our Fox 13 political editor. What do you make of those remarks, Craig? You could see him here with his family. I mean, he is from the Tampa Bay area. They ventured down to Miami to hold this campaign event. Talk to me about what's going through your mind.
Well, they ventured to Miami because you have the largest swath of Democratic voters that he's going to need to turn out and vote, because other candidates time and time again have found a fall off in voting in that part of the state, ultimately costing them races. It cost Jim Davis in 2006. It cost Alex Sink in 2010. It cost Charlie Crist in 2014. I could go on and on. You see a pattern here? That's why he's in South Florida. That's why he's revving up the Democratic base there. That's why he wants to get disproportional attention in that part of the state, because he doesn't need it as much also in the largest media market of Florida, which happens to be Tampa Bay, because he is better known in this part of the state, having served as the successor to Bill Young in Congress as a Republican at the time. And to that point, he was a Republican turned Democrat. So in those remarks, what stood out to me is the fact that he thanked Democrats for welcoming him into the party. A distinction. There will be obvious comparisons drawn to Charlie Crist, who also changed parties, also was a congressman for the area before he was a governor, too. But I think one of the key differences is that Charlie Crist consistently said that the party, the Republican Party, left him. David Jolly has drawn a distinction in saying that he has changed. And so he addressed that tonight, but he also very much reached out to not just base Democrats in Southeast Florida, but to independents, nonpartisan voters, and Republicans as well. He stressed that he wants a lean government, smart government. He spoke out against preemption. There was a Republican belief in years past that local governments know what's best, not dictates from Tallahassee or from Washington, in this case Tallahassee. That Jolly is speaking to that point as well. He also addressed the faith community and spoke of his own faith. And he, in doing that, made the point rather fervently, I would say, that that government should stay out of churches and out of people's lives as it relates to the practice of their faith, or whether they choose not to practice a faith. All of those are efforts to reach across the aisle to his former party, the Republican Party, and of course to nonpartisan voters as well as showing up in Southeast Florida, where Democrats need to do, because if they don't get the votes they need in terms of the turnout mix in November. They surely are going to lose.
Yeah. When is the last time that a Democratic nominee won for the governor of Florida?
Well, you have to go back to Lawton Child in 1994.
Yeah.
And that was a squeaker, by the way. He barely won. He was running against Jeb Bush the first time around. And then what happened after that? It was Buddy McKay versus Jeb Bush, and that's when Jeb Bush clobbered him. Let's call it for what it is. And then in every race thereafter, Bush versus McBride, followed by the following candidates. You had Rick Scott versus Alex Sink, and then Charlie Crist versus Rick Scott, and then in 2018, DeSantis versus Gillum. That one was very close, but in the other races, it wasn't particularly close. And you had a situation back then, and this is really important, I think, to stress, Regina, is that Democrats greatly outnumbered Republicans when Democrats barely won. And it was Lawton Chiles, nonetheless, this larger-than-life figure who barely won in 1994 when Democrats had an overwhelming advantage in terms of voter registration. Now it's flipped. Republicans have a significant advantage in voter registration. Republicans now greatly outnumbered Democrats, and it wasn't that long ago when Democrats greatly outnumbered Republicans and they still got beat. So that speaks to the math that David Jolly is up against, and it speaks to the reason of why he is where he is and why he said what he said.
Craig, we also have Byron Donalds speaking live right now out of Orlando. Guys, what we're going to do is we are going to take a quick break. He has been speaking. We didn't want to get out of David Jolly in the middle of his remarks. So we are able to take you to the top of when Byron Donalds officially started his speech, the first step of what could be a victory for the governor of Florida come November. We're going to step away for that break. We'll get you started from the top of Representative Donald's remarks. So keep it here. We'll be right back with that. All right, everyone, we are back here on our special coverage on the stream for the 2026 Florida primaries. You are hearing the voice of host and producer Regina Gonzalez, as well as Fox 13 political editor Craig Patrick, who has been so kind to join us throughout the duration of our stream. Results coming in real time, and we just got the push alert that, and this was expected, Craig, that the St. Petersburg mayoral race heading to a runoff.
Everything about this is expected, right down to the polling spread. Yeah, Charlie Crist, the former governor of Florida, Republican at the time, turned Democrat, extraordinarily well known across the state, enormous name recognition, and is from St. Petersburg, and former congressman who represented the area as well, and Secretary of Education and State Attorney General. He has been in politics for decades, and with that kind of blue chip name, with the financial resources that he had, his prowess in raising money, he swamped the incumbent mayor, Ken Welch. And Ken Welch drew this kind of opposition, not just from a former governor, but others as well, because he did encounter controversy as mayor. And it involved the response to storms, which his critics would assert is inadequate, and he would assert they did well. That's something that's going to be litigated now in the campaign as we go into November in the runoff between the former governor, Charlie Crist, and Mayor Welch. But I mentioned it earlier, when Mayor Welch declared victory, and he does declare victory, rightfully so, because he does come in second place and advance to the runoff.
Yeah.
Immediately after his remarks, he took questions, and the questions put him on the defensive. They were asking him about the Moffitt Cancer Center deal that fell apart because the negotiations did not come together based on the concessions that the mayor was seeking. Debris piles after the storms of 2024. There are a number of issues that, and not the least of which would be the loss of the Rays deal to keep professional baseball in St. Petersburg, as far as we can tell. And with that, though that was a result of the hurricane, nothing a mayor could have done, he did reward staff with very hefty bonuses, which he said he later regretted, thinking the deal was done and delivered before it fell apart. These are all things collectively that cost him, that drew the kind of contenders that he faced. It's unusual for an incumbent mayor of St. Pete to draw multiple challengers as he did, including a former fire chief, and including a popular incumbent and experienced city council member in Brandy Gabbard, and of course, including the former congressman and governor in Charlie Crist. That in its own right is quite different, isn't it? But it also is different that a mayor encountered as many issues as he has in his, I would say 4, but it's now 5 years because they changed the election cycle in St. Petersburg, and he has to answer for that. Now he has to explain what his vision is going forward. He has to be able to address the controversies in a way that perhaps flips some votes, because at this point, he is effectively well behind Charlie Crist, just as the polls that I saw projected he would. And as the results came in, this is citywide. We don't see, as we have in some races, where there is an overwhelming geographic preference for this part of the city or that neighborhood versus the other. We have results that came in consistently showing that Charlie Crist is in the catbird seat at this point. He has the inside track, and Welch has some time, and he can definitely do it, but he doesn't have a whole lot of time to catch up and to make his case.
Definitely. Craig, I want to move on because I know what people are eager to hear is Representative Byron Donalds. He has officially clinched the nomination for Republican gubernatorial candidate, Governor Ron DeSantis, term limited. He is speaking live right now. We didn't want to interrupt David Jolly when he was talking about him clenching the nomination for the Democratic seat for Florida governor. So what we want to do is we are able to take you to the top of Representative Donald's remarks. He is holding a campaign event in Orlando, Florida. So here it is, guys. Let's listen in.
Your time is up, my time is now. You can't see me, my time is now. It's the franchise where I'm shining now. You can't see me, my time is now. In case you forgot or fell off, I'm still hot, knock your shell off. My money stacked fat, plus I can't turn the swell off. The franchise doing big business, I live this, it's automatic. I win this, so you hear those horns, you finish. A soldier, and I stay under you fighting. Plus I'm storming on you chumps like I'm thunder and lightning. Ain't no way you breaking me, kid. I'm harder than nails. Plus I keep it on lock like I'm part of the jail. I'm slow
Erica, there's a lot of love in this room tonight. A lot of love. I want to start by thanking God for all his blessings and protection over my family and over my team. I also want to thank the most important people in my life. To my amazing family, Erica, my incredible wife of 23 years. And our sons, Damon, Darren, and Mason, thank you guys for standing by my side during the long days and the late nights on the trail. I love you guys. I love you. I want to thank all of our supporters. All of you are here, and many, many more. And I want to thank the best campaign team in all of America. We've been crisscrossing Florida. We've been knocking hundreds of thousands of doors, taking our message to all Floridians. And tonight, because of your sweat, because of your hard work, we have won a massive victory. Now, we've just come through a hard-fought primary. I got a call from Paul Renner and James Fishback tonight. And they, hold on, I'm going to tell you why in a moment. And they congratulated me and all of us on a hard-fought victory. And my conversation with both of them is very simple. Congratulations. Let's go beat David Jolly in November. You see, because individual opinions and passionate supporters are the beauty of our conservative movement. But tonight, the primary is over. Tonight, we put aside our differences. Tonight, we are one united Republican Party. You see, I remember Erica and I were sitting around a fire pit last year with friends, and we were talking about this campaign, and we were talking about the future of Florida. No matter the issue or the policy, the conversation always ended with us talking about the Florida dream. For us, it's personal. You know my story. I came to Florida 30 years ago on a Greyhound bus. At 17 years old, with just a trunk full of clothes, I arrived in Tallahassee. Go Noles. Go Noles. Could have sworn it was opening weekend here in Orlando because it became Noles Nation here tonight. But in all honesty, and Blaise Ngolia, our CFO, is here with us. Blaise, congratulations on a decisive victory. And Blaise has heard me say this, and I mean it. I love all of our schools now. I love them all. When Erica and I got married, it wasn't always easy. Our first apartment was 1,200 square feet, and it had those old Jalowsi windows. We didn't have the money for the security deposit, so we had to roll that into our rent. I worked at Cracker Barrel and moved furniture on the weekends just to make ends meet. Erica was 6 months pregnant with our first son, and she worked full-time as a staff accountant while working for Kelly Services on the weekend. We did this to build a life for our family. This state gave me a chance. I went on to spend 17 years in banking, finance, and insurance, and it prepared me for the very real economic challenges that Floridians face every single day. You see, the Florida dream to us is clear. It's the promise that if you work hard, you can get ahead, own a home, raise your family, and give your kids a better shot than you had without government holding you back. In Florida, we have built a strong foundation under former Governor Rick Scott. And under Governor Ron DeSantis, we have supercharged that foundation, making Florida the envy of every state in America. We are going to continue that legacy and take Florida to the next level. To protect and expand that dream for the next generation, my administration will be guided by 3 pillars: making Florida accountable, achievable, and most of all, affordable. An affordable Florida starts with a limited government that respects hardworking taxpayers who fund it. Under my watch, every contract, every budget, and every fee this state spends will be posted online, out in the open, where you can see it. We are going to continue the Department of Government Efficiency that was started here in Florida under Governor DeSantis. As your governor, we are going to doge all local governments and all state agencies. There will be no sacred cows. Taxpayers deserve to know that their hard-earned dollars are being spent efficiently, transparently, and with total integrity. An achievable Florida means every Florida child gets a real shot at the Florida dream, no matter where they start. We are going to make sure our kids master math, reading, and writing, not just to have the best K-12 system in America, but to have the best K-12 system in the world. And we know in a modern economy, there are multiple ways to be successful. That's why we're establishing the Launchpad Initiative, an employer-led program connecting high school juniors and seniors with in-demand careers in construction, aerospace, defense, and manufacturing. They will learn, they will earn, and they will graduate into high-paying six-figure jobs without student debt. Because if a kid can make real money right out of high school, that's a kid already building the Florida dream for themselves. And right here in Florida, we are going to lead the world in commercial space. Cape Canaveral is no longer a museum. It is the most active spaceport in the Western Hemisphere. We are going to slash the red tape, expand our technical workforce, and keep the welders, machinists, and engineers of the future right here in the Sunshine State. An affordable Florida means a Florida that stays a place that you can actually afford to live. From your tax bill to your insurance premium to the cost of your health care. First, we're going to keep cutting your taxes. When I was in Washington as a member of Congress, I fought for your federal taxes to be cut. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and the largest tax cut on Social Security in this country's history. That's real money back in your pockets, in the pockets of Florida workers and Florida's retirees. And as your governor, I will continue to fight to make sure you keep more of your hard-earned money. On property taxes, whether Amendment 3 passes or fails, we are going to reform property taxes in our state with the goal of eliminating homestead property taxes once and for all. And if the math can't take us there, we will target that relief to our seniors on fixed income and our working families who want Florida to remain their home. And let's be very clear. And I see Sheriff T.K. Waters from Duval County is right here in front. How you doing, T.K.? At the same time, hey, Steve Wood in Hendry County. At the same time, we will not jeopardize funding for our police, firefighters, and first responders because they have our backs and we have theirs. On insurance, you pay your premium every single month on time, and you deserve real results. We will create a public scorecard on every insurance company in Florida, tracking how fast they pay claims and how often they deny them, bringing real competition, real transparency, and real accountability to drive rates down. On housing, we are going to slash government red tape so that whether you're a young worker starting out or a growing family or a senior on fixed income, you can actually buy and afford a home in Florida. On healthcare, under our Your Doctor, Your Price plan, we will require healthcare providers to post real cash prices for all procedures up front in plain English. No prior authorization games, no surprise billing, and we are going to align state prescription drug pricing with federal pricing so you pay less at the pharmacy counter. And finally, on power and artificial intelligence, we will lead in innovation, but we will not put the cost of AI on the backs of Floridians and their electric bills. We will mandate closed-loop systems for water. We will enforce strict setbacks for residential neighborhoods, protect our pocketbooks, protect our communities, and protect our environment, or no data centers, period. And please remember this, none of our prosperity works without safe streets. In Florida, law and order will always be the standard. We will back the blue, we will support our sheriffs and police officers, and we will keep our communities safe. Now, an accountable, achievable, and affordable Florida is our vision for the future. But in 77 days, Florida, we face a critical choice. In November, we will be facing off against liberal David Jolly. Oh, I see you've heard of him. Well, let me tell you some more. David Jolly is a career political insider, a Washington lobbyist casting checks for special interests, and an MSNBC commentator who was part of the very revolving door he claims he'd clean up. David Jolly represents everything that folks hate about Washington, D.C. Liberal David Jolly is the change that Florida cannot afford. When it comes to your wallet, Jolly opposed cutting taxes for working families and seniors. Jolly defended a $4 trillion tax hike that would raise taxes on every Floridian, taxing your tips, taxing your overtime, and taxing your Social Security on seniors who spent a lifetime earning. Jolly would rather you pay more than $3,000 in taxes every single year. On property insurance, his plan is government-run socialism that forces you to prop up state funds with your tax dollars. When COVID hit, David Jolly chose Fauci over Florida. He fled to Pennsylvania because he wanted endless lockdowns over common sense leadership by Ron DeSantis. And he later said that Fauci has unimpeachable judgments. Well, let me be very clear. Anyone who chose Fauci over Florida does not deserve to lead our state into the future. On law enforcement and the border, he wants to end Florida's cooperation with federal authorities and has floated open borders. On our children, David Jolly actively champions radical gender policies and opposes protecting our children from life-altering transgender surgeries. This is a man who says he found his home in the Democrat Party, and that the Democrats are right on all the issues. David Jolly said he felt welcome in the Democrat Party under Kamala Harris. That's what he said. The same Kamala Harris that left our borders open, left our streets unsafe, and created the largest inflation most Americans have ever seen. Florida, David Jolly is out of his mind. And to top it all off, he has vowed that on election night that he wants to apologize for Florida to the rest of the world. Well, let's make something very clear to David Jolly. We are not going to apologize for Florida. We will not apologize for keeping our state open. We will not apologize for keeping our taxes low. We will not apologize for backing our police. And we will not apologize for protecting girls' sports. And we will never apologize for protecting parental rights. No one listened to David Jolly on MSNBC, and no one should listen to him now. He lost before, and on November 3rd, he is going to lose again. See, here's my promise, Florida. Tonight and every day moving forward, I will keep your taxes low. I will lower your insurance costs. I will protect school choice. I will stand with law enforcement. I will defend common sense when it comes to protecting our girls and our children's puberty. And I will make Florida more affordable. The general election starts tonight, and I can't do this alone. I need your prayers, I need your energy, and I need your hard work. So I ask you, are you with me to keep Florida red? Are you with me to keep Florida free? Then let's get out and build a state that's truly accountable, achievable, and affordable. Together, we will make the Florida dream a reality for every mom wanting the best for her kids, for every dad providing for his family, for every young person like our own sons desiring to own a home and start a family, and for every retiree enjoying their golden years. Together, we will not just be defending the Florida dream, we will take the Florida dream to a whole new level. God bless you, Florida. God bless you for being here tonight. And God bless the United States of America.
All right, there you have it. We are not going to apologize for Florida. Byron Donalds, Congressman Byron Donalds, winning the Republican governor nomination, already heading into the general election with his audience, celebrating there with some confetti at his campaign event in Orlando, Florida, which now at this point is people mingling and celebrating, Craig, huh?
Yeah, as you'd expect. I mean, this is Donald's base. This is a crowd, so you'd expect that part. And Republicans, you know, at this point are uniting. I would expect. Donald certainly said they were when he referenced a couple of his challengers, opponents, calling him. That's the first part of a speech when you make it through a very contentious, though not largely contested battle to unite the party. Because while he got 50% or darn close to it, that means that around half the Republican electorate didn't vote for him. So the first thing he needs to do is unite. So he started his speech in that direction. The next thing he did was get into his biography, because you have to remember, a lot of people outside of Southwest Florida are not terribly familiar with Congressman Byron Donalds. Maybe even in Southwest Florida may not know him that well. So one of his challenges is to explain who he is. The same can be said, of course, for Democratic nominee David Jolly. And then from there, in explaining who he is, he gets into his background as a lender, his work in the banking industry and the insurance industry, and then he parlays that professional experience into making the case that he knows how to tackle the biggest issue that Floridians, in fact, Americans by large, are facing, and that is the high costs of living, with wages across many sectors being largely flat. And with that, he said he's going to take actions, though he didn't get into great specifics. You don't do that in a nominee acceptance speech generally. Those details are yet to come, and that's where this race perhaps will be won or lost. But he pressed the point that he will cut red tape, that he will find ways to lower prices for Floridians who are caught in that squeeze of high prices. And on top of that, to the issue of wages, he called for an expansion of the aerospace industry. And he previously called for significant renovations and upgrades to our spaceport around Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral in order to bring the kind of industry that we are expecting as it continues to take off in the next couple of years. That's the core of his message. And then from there, he knows his challenger. He knows the polls are relatively tight, and you can't make much of the polls now anyway. He knows that he has a formidable Democratic challenger, a centrist Democrat, and so at that point, he launches into David Jolly with sharp criticism, and those criticisms are prefaced on his contention that Jolly is a liberal. So that's the narrative we know he's going to press in a state like Florida. And to make his case, he's reminding, in fact, informing a good number of voters that Jolly was at one point, after his time in Congress, a contributor to MSNBC. It was called MSNBC at the time. It no longer is. And he made the assertion that during the pandemic, that in his statements that Jolly aligned with Fauci. What can we read with Dr. Fauci? What can we read into that? One, he thinks it's a winning strategy. And two, I have a feeling we might see some ads, perhaps, of David Jolly's work as a contributor when he might have said something to that effect. So he's kind of illustrating, I think, some of the attacks yet to come. And it frames a really fascinating debate. Now, Regina, we know how Byron Donalds cruised to the nomination, don't we? What's the number one factor? It's the endorsement of President Trump.
But
that's how you do it. That's how you, right? Yeah.
Yes, but I was going to say something that I asked him about when he joined our stream earlier was I think the whole thing here has been the fact that he was endorsed by President Donald Trump, but never by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And when I asked him, for lack of a better term, did that hurt your feelings? He said there are some things in politics you can't control, but he has respected what the DeSantis administration has done so far, and he plans to carry a lot of that into if he wins.
Oh, well, Governor DeSantis will endorse him. But how did he get the nomination? It wasn't with DeSantis' endorsement. It was with the president's endorsement in a Republican race. It's game over at that point. Republicans in the state of Florida, this is the president's home state. They are going to go in a race as high profile as this with the president's recommendation or endorsement, barring something substantial, which did not occur.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how he got the nomination. The number one reason on the board. That's how he got it. Now, how many times did you hear him talk about that tonight? At all? Did you hear him mention Trump at all?
No.
Not at all,
No,
did he?
he didn't.
What does that
No,
tell
he
you?
didn't.
What does that
Doesn't
tell
make
you?
me double
Now, I'll tell you who did talk about it, David Jolly. David Jolly said, I challenge you, Byron Donalds, bring the president to Florida. Use his name. Use his name now that you're in a general race against Democrats and independents where the president is enormously unpopular. Well, you're reading the tea leaves there, and you're seeing where the political strategists on both sides of the aisle are looking at this thing and saying, well, maybe at this point, you can't ride the president's endorsement, even in the state of Florida, to a victory in what might be a close race, given the circumstances in which we currently find ourselves. And so I didn't hear much. In fact, I've got to go back and listen, but I didn't hear any mention of his endorsement by President Trump in this speech, in which he's trying to connect with independent-minded voters, nonpartisan voters, and reach across the aisle with Democrats, too. Instead, he pressed the point, number one, of above all else, affordability. He's going to tackle the cost of living.
All right. Well, why don't we head on down to Miami and check in with Fox 13's Aaron Mesmer, who was front row watching live along with us as David Jolly stepped up to the podium, thanked his, supporters, voters for clinching the Democratic nomination for this governor's race. Aaron, tell me what the reaction was like in that room and what you make of that so-called the first step to a victory speech.
Yeah, and Regina, I think what we saw during that victory speech was the focus of David Jolly right now is on unity. I think he sees that he's going to have to cross political aisles. He has to cross not just from the Democrats into independents. He's got to cross over into Republicans as well and pull some voters that you would think would maybe vote for Congressman Donalds. So he preached unity. I want to just some things that I jotted down that he said. He said politics are broken. The political atmosphere has gotten away from us. He says we are bound together not by party but by patriotism. He says we are a nation in crisis and the leaders are trying to divide us, and he urged folks to come together, and he believes he is the answer to all this, at least in Florida. He views himself as a potential bridge for independent voters, for non-party affiliated voters, and for even some moderate Republicans who may not agree with President Trump's politics. He also hammered home the things he's focused on throughout his campaign: affordability, housing, healthcare, and education. He hammered home all of those topics, and I think that's going to be what we see coming from him as he now campaigns toward November, because I think affordability, he sees that as something that maybe he may have an edge in his mind on Congressman Donalds, with people who are kind of tired of things not really getting reined in as much as they would have hoped over the last couple of years, Regina.
We had been. Oh, my microphone is not on. Hello, Aaron. Something I also keep talking to Craig about is he is from the Tampa Bay area, but he decided to head down to Miami. Craig, maybe you can weigh in here. We've been talking about a lot this evening. Why did he do this in Miami? He voted in Largo this morning, so they've all been on some road trips today.
A big trip. Yep. It is a long trip. We did that trip. He actually had an extra hour because he came from Largo. We came down here from Tampa, so he drove about 5 hours here. But I think that shows how important in his mind it is to get voters out of the Miami area. He sees South Florida as maybe one of his only paths toward victory at this point, because he's going to have to sway some voters here who maybe in the more recent history have voted Republican. They voted for Governor DeSantis the last couple of times. So, and having Gwen Graham as his running mate, as a potential lieutenant governor, is something that he's focused on as well, because he sees the pull and the sway that she has in this area, that her family has in this area. There is a resounding, I think, love still for former governor, former U.S. Senator Bob Graham. He and his father, her grandfather, are viewed as people who really helped develop this area and still have a lot of pull in this area. And they are hoping that can help them and help David Jolly pull some voters who may not have otherwise voted for a Democratic candidate previously.
I was struck, Aaron, by the themes that Jolly pushed of lean government, of ending the era of preemption, going back to the days when Republican leadership years ago thought that local government knows what's best, when he called for tax relief and prudence in government, and when he spoke to the faith community and to his own faith. Not only is he trying to energize the Democratic base in Southeast Florida, he also appears to be speaking very directly to independent voters and some Republican voters as well. To what extent do you think that might resonate across the entire state?
I think it's going to have to, and I think he sees that. And I think that's why, as I said off the top here, that he's focusing so heavily on affordability. That is something people know what's in their wallets. They know what's in their bank accounts. And that's something that has that kind of appeal. It's why he is so focused lately on, and I just jotted some notes down here, on trying to reduce insurance costs. That's something that continues to come up and has not, I think in many people's minds, and maybe most people's minds, been resolved in recent years. He wants to expand Medicaid in Florida. This and to reduce insurance costs, we've heard him mention several times a catastrophic fund that would that would take hurricane risk out of the private market, and he thinks that would greatly reduce those insurance funds. He also talked about education, which Republicans have largely hammered home for the last, 8 years about. And he's saying, well, there's more in his mind that we can do, that Florida can do to try to raise teacher pay. He wants to see, he called it a 10-year public education renaissance and raising teacher pay 30%. So I think he's focusing a lot on topics that should have wide-ranging appeal and maybe hit a lot of those voters who may not have voted Democratic recently, because like we've been saying all along, he's going to need that. It could be an uphill battle. It has been for the Democratic candidates the last two gubernatorial races.
And especially in South Florida, where you have a number of Democrats who voted Republican, obviously, according to exit polls and otherwise. But you also have a problem. Democrats have had a problem in Broward County in getting Democrats out to vote in off-year elections when it's not a presidential race. Turnout goes way down. And to that point, David Jolly is a preacher's son, and he speaks in ways that I think can rev people up. It looked as if the crowd was fired up. To what extent did his tone, did he excite and rev up the crowd?
He was hyped.
I mean, I think he was hyped. He absolutely was. And I want to point out, you said he's a minister's son. He also had a reverend here from Tallahassee. So between where he is, who is Lieutenant Governor, who's his running mate, plus the reverend he brought here, who I'm sure is one of his friends from Tallahassee, that's the entire expanse of Florida that he's trying to cover with the people he brought with him here to speak during his victory speech. That stood out to me, that he's clearly trying to make inroads, even with who he's bringing with him. And there was a lot of energy in that, 50 to 100 people who are here in this crowd. You could hear how excited they were, and also how, I think, confident he feels in a race against Congressman Byron Donalds. There was a poll that they gave us that shows David Jolly up 1 point in that poll. I'm sure Congressman Donalds would probably show us, well, this poll disagrees with that poll. That's all where, the math goes and who they're asking. However, that's going to be what we're hearing for the next several months as we move toward November. Who's looking at what polls, what people are talking to, and also who can make those inroads in areas where they might not have otherwise in the past.
Yeah, and he has said that if the election were tomorrow or tonight against Donalds, he would win. Well, the polls show in one, Jolly up 1, another, Donalds up 5. But what they are showing either way, and you're right about that, Aaron, they can produce different numbers, but they show that the returns would be much closer than we saw 4 years ago, and perhaps more in line with what we saw back in 2018 when Governor DeSantis won by the skin of his teeth in recount.
Right. It's a tough battle. The state has, there have been more Republicans entering the state, more Republicans in areas where probably, let's say 15 to 20 years ago, there were more Democrats. And I think that David Jolly is aware of that. But again, as we've said all along, he views his change from a Republican to a Democrat not as a problem, but as something that he can harp on during the campaign. And he could say, look, I was a Republican. I didn't agree with President Trump, so I changed. And David Jolly views that as something that I think he thinks others may agree with him, and he may be to pull some of those voters toward his campaign.
And what we thought was fascinating in Byron Donalds' acceptance speech is that he didn't appear to mention his endorsement from President Trump. And yet Jolly is now quite eagerly mentioning that, pointing out that he would like to have Donalds welcome welcome the president to the state on his behalf and stump for Donalds as much as he would like. What does that tell you about the pivot that we're seeing from both campaigns as we head into November?
I think it says a lot about, when you look back, just say 2 years ago, I don't know that David Jolly would have said that, Craig, 2 years ago. I think President Trump, or even 4 years ago even, I mean, you go back anything beyond with the last year or so, I don't know that he would have made that challenge. But I think he sees some waning support, maybe in his mind, among more moderate Republicans, and he's trying to harp on that and hope that he can pull those votes. That's what it says to me. He sees an inroad there. Maybe he can get those voters because he knows he's going to have to. He knows he's going to need every single non-party affiliated voter he can get, independent. And maybe those undecided Republican voters will cross the aisle because David Jolly is going to need that to happen with the amount of Republican voters who have entered the state and are, in all likelihood, and have previously voted for President Trump and the people who he supports and endorses.
All right. Well, Aaron, we have so appreciated all of your live coverage throughout the course of this stream. I know you've also been doing hits for our normal shows for Fox 35 Orlando. So we are forever grateful for you and to Travis out there behind the camera. Thank you so much. Have a safe drive back tomorrow.
Before you go, I mean, one more thing. We're going to have David Jolly here live 10:30. So when we go back over to Fox 13 News at 10 and 11, 10:30, we're going to have a live interview here with David Jolly, and he'll answer some of these questions for us.
Awesome. Well, we'll be looking forward to that. Aaron, you've done a fabulous job. Big thanks to you and Travis. We really appreciate you.
Yep. You too, Regina. Thanks.
All right, everyone. Wow. It's almost 9:30, Craig. How you feeling?
Well, not many surprises. There were some. The Democratic Senate race in particular was a surprise to many. You've heard my take on this for a few days. I was not surprised. I thought we might have that outcome. And then we got the outcome numerically that was expected in the race for governor in both parties. So the one that really leaps off the page that a lot of people may not have seen coming, but I was the one you'll recall saying, look for this very possibility because of the late-breaking momentum that State Representative Angie Nixon had among the far left of the Democratic Party and the endorsement she picked up. It was sending a signal to the left wing of the party that they are with her, and they certainly showed it in fairly convincing fashion. Now, with nearly all of the votes in, this will make some national noise. A lot of people will make a narrative out of this in that the Democratic Party of Florida is venturing toward democratic socialism because Angie Nixon identifies or aligns with the Democratic Socialists of America, and she has made some provocative statements. For example, when asked in one interview if she would support abolishing the U.S. Senate, she said it's something that she would be open to. And with that, I think that it puts her in a spotlight. But more than that, it puts the national punditry in a situation where they're saying, wait a minute, what does this tell us about the intramural fight within the Democratic Party? Is it the left wing? Is it the liberal populists, or is it the center left that's carrying the day? Well, it's a little hard to tell in Florida because Nixon is, and her victory is an indication that it is the populist left that is carrying the day among the Democrats. And yet David Jolly, though he didn't have substantial competition for sure, David Jolly tells a different story. So you have a tale of two very different candidates at the top of the Democratic ticket in terms of where they align politically and what issues that they press. And that can have an interesting impact. By the way, Ashley Moody runs away with the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. She is the appointed incumbent appointed by Governor DeSantis. No surprise there at all. We totally expected that. And then polling shows that she has, a decent lead over both Nixon and Vindman, though Nixon did a little better than Vindman did. I think maybe Democratic voters might have seen that particular poll, and that could have been a factor as well. But more than anything else, I think it was the liberal wing of the party that delivered for Angie Nixon, and a little-known state lawmaker therefore rides that into victory tonight versus a far better known retired Lieutenant Colonel in Alexander Vindman, who was a key witness in the first Trump impeachment and may have presumed that he had the nomination. It certainly appeared as if he did because he was looking past Angie Nixon, and that could have been one of his, obviously it was one of his mistakes, but just the appearance of looking past a Democratic competitor may have cost him votes as well.
What do we feel someone like him, and I'm sure we'll be able to check in with him again at some point later this week, where does he go from here?
Not far. Oops. It was a pretty poor showing by someone who raised as much money as he did and was banking it and was just sure, at least he projected assuredness, that he was going to face off against the incumbent Republican Senator Ashley Moody. And the fact that he doesn't just come up short, he comes up substantially short, you would certainly have to question his future in Florida politics. And he hasn't been living in Florida that long anyway. I think that Democrats from both ends of the spectrum within the party might well be looking past Alex Vindman and say, gee, if he were to run again, maybe it wouldn't be the best move. Now, there are some you don't have Richard Nixon to kick around anymore, who seemed down and out, and lo and behold, they recover a few years later. And you can say the same of Vindman, but I think there may be a better chance, based on what we're seeing in the returns tonight, that his day is past.
All right. I want to turn, Craig, to the St. Pete mayoral race now going into a runoff. We were able to hear from current incumbent Mayor Ken Welch as we were learning that this was most likely, I mean, we knew that this was most likely going to go. Yeah. What we didn't, though, play, and this is only about 4 minutes, we're going to do this, and then we're going to welcome in another guest, a political science professor from University of South Florida. Charlie Crist did speak from his campaign event, so I want to listen into what he has to say here, Craig. You and I can kind of break that down, and then we'll continue on. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
This room, a lot of people not in this room. This is an amazing day, and I can't thank you enough. Senator Roussan, you're incredible. You know, Secretary Peterman, I'm sure you're here. Chelsea, my fiance, I can't thank you enough. Robert, my man. Jonathan, where is Mayor Baker? He's tall. Boom, my man. Thank you, Rick, very, very much. We're a couple of Knowles, but I love the Gators too, right, Ed? You know, why not? I can't tell you how grateful I am. Really. What is this balloon in my head? Stand over here. Yeah, I see it. Anyway, I'm not going to talk for long. I'm just full of gratitude and no attitude. And I can't thank you enough for what you all did, for all your help, your support, your prayers, your money. It was great. I can't thank you enough. Honest to God, I am humbled and overwhelmed. Gina, thank you. It's just amazing what happened here. You know, we got a 15-point lead. That's incredible. Over an incumbent. It's very humbling, and we have a long way to go, about 70 days to November the 3rd. I had mixed emotions. People were starting to ask me toward the end, do you want it to end on primary night? And I'm like, I love campaigning so much. Because I love people. It's really kind of simple, Rick. It's how we roll. And I can't thank you enough. We've got to make St. Pete affordable. We've got to do the things that we need to do to change and get it better, get us back on track. And we're going to do that, Melissa. We're going to make that happen. With your help, Reverend Sykes, thank you. You had some great quotes in the paper today. God bless you. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Enjoy this. And let's get to work tomorrow early. It's incredible what we can do. And we'll bring St. Pete back and make St. Pete shine once again. God bless you. Thank you so much. Johnny.
There we go. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our special primary election coverage. Charlie Crist speaking as this race for St. Pete mayor now goes into a runoff. Craig, honestly, for the viewers who may not be following, election lingo too much and what all this means, can I ask you a very simple question of what a runoff race means?
Oh, it means the top two vote getters advance to November. You don't have that in the other races. Yeah. This is a little different. This is a nonpartisan St. Pete mayoral race. In the other races, doesn't matter. If one candidate gets one or two more votes than the other, million votes cast, the one who gets more votes advances in the state of Florida, and there is no runoff.
Gotcha.
They get the nomination. But this isn't about a nomination. This is about who's going to be the mayor. So in the city of St. Petersburg, the first and second place finishers live to fight another day to see who wins ultimately in the month of November.
And I mean, when you talk about what Charlie Crist represents, I mean, I feel like his whole thing here, and he has ran for many positions, but I mean, he's trying to say he's coming back home. What do you make of why he's doing this?
Well, first and foremost, he's a politician at heart. He always has been. That can be a pejorative to some, but Charlie Crist embraces it. Public service is his life. He's done it for a very long time. It's his identity. It's what he lives for, and it's what he projects. So you call him a politician, he'll say thank you.
Yeah.
And with that, you combine it with the fact that his prior efforts to run for governor did not pan out. By process, and then his district was redrawn. He saw the tea leaves there. To continue to serve in the way that he likes, he sees his hometown of St. Pete as the best way in which to do it, and he certainly showed that he may be well on his way. And in terms of the other why, based on his speeches on the campaign trail and debates, he has qualms about how the city has been led for the past 5 years through hurricanes and then beyond, with the negotiations over Moffitt Cancer Center that failed, the Mahaffey Theater's issues, other issues that Charlie Crist has raised. It is his contention that he can do better. You combine his concerns with the city with his sense of optimism, you get exactly the speech we listened to but 2 minutes ago. And ultimately, he has the inside track, though you can't count out the incumbent mayor. They're not that far apart in the polls. He's at a disadvantage, but he certainly has time to make up the difference. It's going to depend, obviously, on those who supported other candidates, which way they're going to break. And one more thing I would point out here, the race in St. Petersburg is getting overshadowed, isn't it, by other races? It surely will be by the race for governor in Florida. That's going to draw much more attention. See, the races in St. Pete used to be in the spring, and they drew a lot more attention in the media and otherwise because of it. It's going to be more challenging for the incumbent mayor, therefore, to make up perhaps some lost ground when it's going to be harder to get as much attention when you're competing with so many other races, including some congressional races, as well as the race for governor and U.S. Senate.
All right. Well, what I want to do now, Craig, we have been very blessed not only to have you, but other guests join us live on the stream tonight during our coverage. I want to welcome into the conversation right now Dr. Joshua Scacco, Associate Professor of Communication and Director of the Center for Sustainable Democracy at the USF Department of Communication. Dr. Scacco, we appreciate you for joining us. Right off the bat, I know you've kind of been watching along before you joined us live, some of these races. Tell us off the bat what your thoughts are.
In general, this seems very much in line with what, if you were on the ground here in Florida over the past couple of weeks, in terms of the marquee races for governor and Senate, on really both sides of the aisle, you would have probably anticipated some of these outcomes, particularly in the governor's race, but also if you look, for instance, at the Senate Democratic primary as well. So not really necessarily a lot of surprises. Where I'm really interested right now is where turnout is actually going to be, because turnout is a good indicator of enthusiasm in terms of voter enthusiasm within the parties. And one of the things that has been indicated in some of the public surveys is that Democratic voters are much more enthusiastic this year going into the November midterm election about participating and voting in that particular election. And sometimes primaries can give you some of those early tea leaves in terms of where turnout is sitting. And right now, what we're looking at is, and I was just looking at some of these numbers, if we look statewide at voter turnout among Republicans and Democrats, right now, based on where the results sort of stand, about 31.5% of Democratic voters that were registered voted today. So voter turnout among Democrats was about 31.5%. Voter turnout among Republicans was about a point less than that, at 30.65% today. So not much of a gap in terms of potential enthusiasm and those types of things, at least as so far in these particular numbers. But that's one of the places where I'm looking and trying to understand what's going on, as sort of understanding where the tea leaves might be for November.
You know, Doctor, I know that you study and really take a look at, I mean, everything down to the campaign messages. So I guess my question is which campaign messages appear to have connected with voters, and where do you think others may have fallen short?
In a lot of ways tonight, wasn't necessarily, and we've seen this, and I think if you look, for instance, at the Senate Democratic primary, you see sort of a trend that might be happening in other areas of the country too, where the candidate who is lower profile in some ways, but more progressive or more liberal in that particular race, Angie Nixon, for instance, coming out ahead at the end of the night. And so the messaging of particularly the more liberal progressive wing of the Democratic Party seems to be resonating with Democratic primary voters. And that I think is really important, because what we're talking about is we're talking about a fairly small pool of voters. As I just said, approximately 30% of the registered voters in the two major political parties voted today in Florida, and only 10% of the nonpartisan affiliated voters in Florida voted. So we're talking about a very small pool compared to the overall sort of number of registered voters in Florida, which is what we would anticipate with a midterm election primary. And so what that ultimately means is those voters are going to be in their respective primaries more polarized. So Republican voters in the Republican primary are going to be more conservative, and Democratic voters in the Democratic primary in general are going to be more liberal or progressive. And so that tonight, I think, favored in a lot of ways over the past couple of weeks Angie Nixon's messaging here. And you see that as well in a lot of ways in terms of looking at, for instance, the Republican Gubernatorial primary, where Republican-based voters are still strongly in support of Donald Trump. And so President Trump's endorsement of Byron Donalds here seems to have been a really significant factor in moving and having voters coalesce around his particular candidacy.
Doctor, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, we're coming to the end of our live streaming coverage here. Now we shift to general election coverage in November. Someone like you in your profession, what do you start to watch from this point moving forward?
Well, the big question will be, how do these results translate in thinking through the November sort of the November races? So can Democrats, for instance, capitalize on a political environment that in general looks like it is going to favor them? If we look at the issues that are at play, if we look at Donald Trump's approval rating, all of these particular indicators would suggest that in general the political environment favors Democratic candidates this year. That said, what cuts against that in Florida is that Republicans, for instance, have 1 million plus upwards of 1.5 million voter registration advantage over the Democratic Party. And so what the factors that will be in play in terms of whether or not we see competitive races going into the fall will be, one, the candidates, whether or not they can capitalize on sort of messages related to the economy, affordability, those particular types of dynamics. Also, secondly, whether or not we can see, for instance, Democratic candidates really trying to shift the ground in a way that benefits them when we look at what they're up against in terms of voter registration, and also in terms of thinking about voter turnout dynamics. So the key component here may very well be, if Democratic voters are more enthusiastic than Republican voters, can they potentially make up some gaps in many of these congressional districts that might be competitive, that otherwise would not be, and or even at the state level, where we could potentially see, based on sort of the dynamics going into November, see some interesting sort of competitiveness in any one of these races.
Well, Byron Donalds' endorsement from Trump gave him the edge to overwhelmingly win the Republican race. As you noted, this is a state where Republicans now greatly outnumber Democrats. So would it be a good idea tactically and in terms of messaging, or a bad idea for Donalds to bring the president down to Florida and stump side by side with him and press that endorsement?
Well, if you look, for instance, at audience, right? In general, you would say if you have a 1.5 million voter registration advantage among your particular party, that even potentially the hit that Byron Donalds could take amongst independent voters would potentially be made up for with Republican turnout. And so that's, I think, one of the other key things here, which is if you look at the sort of dynamics of what it would take for a Democratic candidate to win statewide, and this is, I think, important, beyond sort of congressional districts or even at state house, state senate districts or county level, to win statewide at this particular point, you would need not only a significant overperformance by Democrats in terms of voter turnout, but also the Democratic candidates would need to take a significant share of independent voters. And if we're looking, for instance, at any sort of indicators tonight, when you see voter turnout among MPAs at 10%, although they're locked out of many of the sort of competitive primaries and things, because Florida has a closed primary, in general, in a midterm off-year election, in a midterm non-presidential election, NPA voters are also going to be significantly less likely to show up than in a presidential election. So it will be the matter of who they get to show up among the NPAs, and then also can Democrats significantly overperform in terms of voter turnout compared to Republicans. And based on where the statistics are tonight, point overperforming Republicans among turnout isn't necessarily going to cut it at the state level.
Dr. Scacco, all great points. We can't thank you enough for joining us in the 11th hour of our coverage, 9:30 at night. We appreciate you so much, and I'm sure we'll definitely be talking to you again soon as we now shift towards that general election coverage. We appreciate you.
Thank you, and have a good night.
You too. All right. Craig, my friend, I know that you have to get ready for the 10 o'clock news where our coverage continues on Fox 13 News as well as the stream. I can't thank you enough for all of your assistance, your insight tonight. How are you feeling as we shift towards that general election coverage?
I think it's going to be a close race for governor. It's going to be one of the most closely watched races in the nation, I think. I think it will be close. I think the days of 2022, when a Republican runs away with it, are over. I don't know that it'll be 2018 where you're in recount territory, or 2000. I don't expect that at all. But I do think that we're going to have a far more competitive race. Florida used to be the ultra battleground state, the nation's biggest swing state. It may not be that, but I think it's going to be a competitive state. And the way that Donalds and Jolly match up, for reasons we'll break down in the days and weeks to come, this will be a fascinating and close race to watch, one that also will be rather hard to predict, though numerically Republicans certainly have the advantage. I think we also have a couple of House races to watch, one in South Florida that we can talk about some, but one in particular in Hillsborough County, stretching all the way to the Polk County line and places south, and that's going to be the race between Beltran and Castor as well. And with Democrats only needing, I believe, a net gain of 3 seats to take over the chamber, that is surely going to be one of the races to watch all across the nation.
Yeah, we've got those results up here. We also have District 13, Leila Gray. What are your thoughts on this, Craig?
It'll be a competitive race, but it's been fool's gold for Democrats who have tried to unseat the Republican incumbent, Ana Paulina Luna. They're trying again. Democrats nationally have already cited this as a race. You know, they have a candidate in Leila Gray who, on paper, appears to be formidable and may well be. And this one may be a fairly close race, especially in a year that's favoring Democrats more than years past, maybe the most we've seen since 2018. But you have a math problem if you're a Democrat, certainly in the state and certainly in the Pinellas County District, too, which includes some surrounding slivers of counties as well, that makes it a tall order for Leila Gray. She's certainly the underdog, no question about that, in the race, but it is not insurmountable for her, especially if the political winds continue to blow in the Democrats' favor. And look, we're saying all of this in August. See how much has changed just in the past 3 months. Think about it. Yeah. Think about how the world has changed since the beginning of 2026, before the Iran conflict even began. Much more can change in the 2 to 3 months to come, one way or the other, which makes this, like the others, surely a race worth watching, and one that may not end up the way that people are expecting on the night of August 18th.
Yeah, and I do want to preface to people that, as you could see, Leila Gray did speak just about an hour ago when she clenched this nomination for District 13. We are not going to be, it's about 20 minutes long. We are not going to be able to play for you everything, but we do want to let you know that they have been grabbing bites and nips of each so-called victory speech. Craig, would you call this a victory speech?
Yes, an acceptance speech, a victory speech. Sure. It's victory speech, absolutely, and it's an acceptance speech for the nomination. But it's also a speech in which you recognize it's a long way from finished, and that's why it's not the finish line, and it's why they're framing the race, each one of them, in terms of how they're going to make things better and how they have a long way to go, and why I'm a better choice than this other person I'm running against.
We also should mention that we did hear from Kelly Kirshner as well, District 16. And forgive me, Craig, who will he go up against for this?
Well, this is going to be the Sarasota race. Well, the Vern Buchanan race.
Buchanan.
I say Sarasota, and it is Sarasota, but with redistricting, the lines have changed a bit, so it incorporates more than that. And so Democrats have also targeted this seat, too. They think they have a chance. Look, they've had a very well-known Republican incumbent who has retired. You don't have the same level of name recognition when you're running against a Republican. And if the winds continue to blow in the Democrats' favor, they think they may have a shot at this. But Sidney Grutter is clearly the overwhelming favorite heading into November. Overwhelming, I think, is a fair word to say here, just based on the dynamics and the statistics of the district that heavily favors Republicans. But I want to remind you, it wasn't long ago, Regina, just a couple of months ago, when we said that Brian Nathan was the overwhelming underdog in the special state Senate race in Hillsborough County. And lo and behold, he won. Yeah. Didn't he? And then we had another House district race in that same special election in the president's own backyard, in which the Democrat also won as well. And that's an indication that anything can happen. And you can look at the odds and say this is far more likely than that to play out. But you also have to consider the possibility that we could have some interesting returns in November, and both parties know it.
Before we let you go, what now? What do we look towards to November?
The race for governor. The race for governor. I mean, you have other races to look forward to. Covering, it's going to be the Hillsborough County and places south and east race between Beltran and Castor. Like I said a moment ago,
the
it's going to clearly be
redistricting
worth watching. And, you know, yes, the Senate race, too, that didn't go the way that some in conventional wisdom may have thought. But by far and away, it is the race for governor between Donalds and Jolly. This one has the potential of being a nail-biter in the end. And this is a race where a lot of people in Florida are just frankly not that familiar with either one of the candidates. And so there's going to be a race by both campaigns to try to define the other on their terms and figure out exactly what they would do that would be different than what leadership has done to address the home insurance crisis, to address rising costs, to address the challenges on the Space Coast and the need to refurbish, to bring the kinds of jobs that we want. And I could go on and on, certainly with respect to property taxes, depending on what happens with Amendment 3. So this is going to be the opportunity to hear specifically, okay, we've heard in generalities what you would do and how you match up. Now we see get into the nitty gritty of the policy, but beyond the policy, how they go after each other and ultimately who comes out on top. And again, this is going to be a really interesting race, the likes of which we haven't seen since 2018.
Wow. Craig Patrick, our political editor, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining. At first, we had planned to take Craig at like the tops of each hours, but you have just been so critical to our coverage. We're so grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
I know you've got more hits to do, so we will set you free. Thank you again, and get some sleep tonight.
Oh, likewise. You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. We are slowly approaching the top of the 10 o'clock hour. I'm used to saying 10 o'clock in the morning. We're talking about 10 o'clock at night. And don't worry, we are going to be joining you tomorrow at 10 a.m. as we normally do on Fox Tampa Bay Live to continue some coverage, to continue everything that has happened tonight, and then move forward to that general election in November, where we will be streaming with you in the evening. I can promise you that. We did have a bunch of races that we haven't even been able to tackle because of the biggies, like the governor's race, as Craig was saying, those results coming in, those candidates speaking live in both Orlando, Byron Donalds, David Jolly in Miami, and as Aaron Mesmer said, I can tell you that he's actually going to be speaking live with David Jolly to get a lot of your questions answered at 10:30. So look to that. What we are going to do is we are going to rotate through all of the races that we have been following here in the Tampa Bay area and across Florida, in Hillsborough County, in Pinellas County, in Sarasota County. There are dozens of races. So we will shift through the results so that way you can watch, get those updates as they have just come in. I believe all of the races are called. And then at the top of the 10 o'clock hour, you will be joined by our other Fox 13 colleagues who are going to continue the coverage through noon. My name is Regina Gonzalez, your host and executive producer of Fox Tampa Bay Live, covering your 2026 Florida primary election coverage for the last 3 hours. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you for sticking with us. This is the whole point of streaming, to bring you those live results and remarks and take you front row. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in a couple of hours, about 12 hours.